Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Unspoken Issues podcast. I am Jesse Starcher. We're bringing you right in here. We're about ready to jump into JLA Rock of Ages. I, of course, am not alone. Dean Compton from the Unspoken Decade is here. Dean, tell me whose idea this was. JLA Rock of Ages.
My idea, I'll tell you why.
Okay. Tell us why JLA Rock of Ages.
Well, we were talking a little bit this, literally right before we started, but it's JLA's Grant Morrison run is like critically acclaimed. It's held, I think he does basically, with the exception of a few issues, like about 1 through like 43. And it's critically acclaimed. It's held up as one of the greatest JLA runs of all time. For a lot of people, this is the best story of it. And there are a lot of great stories. World War III, the invasion of the Fifth Dimension, New World Order, the Adam Strange stuff, Strength in Numbers, which isn't really a story. It's like a collection of smaller stories. The Tomorrow Woman issue, the Green Arrow versus the Key issue. A lot of great stuff. But like for a lot of people, when it comes to Grant Morrison's JLA run, the conversation is going to start and end with Rock of Ages. I read it. I haven't read it in a long time. I know that Darry is a goddamn Grant Morrison mark. So I thought we'd take a look at it and we would kind of break this down for people. I think this is one of those stories that if you're not careful can, be a little confusing, but you give it 2 reads, you should get most of it. It came out in 1997 and it feels not just like a comic book of the time, but it feels like you're watching Deep Impact or fucking Armageddon. It feels very much like a big event disaster movie of the time. So I thought that, Darry loves it. I love it. You can't go wrong with Grant Morrison. You can't go wrong with JLA. I knew you wouldn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew you'd be excited to see Metron again because you like to make fun of his eyebrows. You have a thing for it.
I do have an eyebrow fetish for Metron.
You have an eyebrow thing for Metron. So that's why I suggested it. We try and cover a lot of stuff on here and through the Unspoken Decade. And if anything, sometimes we don't cover the big stuff enough. And I was like, this is a big thing we haven't talked about that we probably should have. I like the nooks and the crannies and the nuances because everything in the 90s gets painted with the same brush. But we got to remember there's some big stuff that happened that was incredible. And it doesn't come much bigger or much more incredible than JLA Rock of Ages.
Darry over there holding his trade paperback together with spit and glue. I'm telling you what.
Paper clips.
Paper clips, yeah.
Rubber bands.
Darry, I know you just showed me you own the trade. Did you pick these issues up off the shelf back in 97?
I didn't. I didn't know who Grant Morrison was in 1997. I wasn't a big DC guy. When this hit, I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's nice seeing all those superheroes in one place. I was turned on to this story because there were action figures of the Revenge Squad, which are the holographic duplicates of the Justice League, and I saw them in a store and I was like, I don't know what these are, but these look pretty cool. Again, they were like translucent. They were the most 90s things ever. I think we must have been in a Kmart or something, and I was like, I want these. I don't know what they're from. And the next time I went to the comic book store, I realized
Are they part of the Total Justice line or the JLA itself line? Because JLA gets its own toy line, very similar to the Total Impact, but just different branded.
One of them, because I believe they were all the same molds that had already been used. So I'm not sure which line they were on, but I think they were just reboxed. And I went to the store and I saw it and I was like, oh, I want to get that. And then soon after that, the trades started coming out. These are really early trades. These are not like what you get today. These are just like, hey, pick up a couple issues of Justice League and, move on. I don't even know. This one doesn't even have like a number, like, volume 2 or something like that. And this was the first one I read.
Trades were very title-based then. Like, you were just supposed to know that New World Order, then this, then Rock of Ages, then Strength in Numbers, then Invasion of the Fifth Dimension, World War III, etc.
Yeah. So I read this. I thought it was great. I had no idea what was going on. I went back, I got the other trades, and then I think by the time I had collected everything and gotten really into it, Morrison was on New X-Men, and that was that. It's been 20 plus years, but I love Rock of Ages. I know it's an easy story for everyone to like. I know that when I go off the deep end and I start talking about the Invisibles, I can always say, well, wait a second. We both like Rock of Ages, right? And most people will say, absolutely, I didn't even know that was Grant Morrison. And then you can build a bridge from there. But This story is great, especially as Dean was pointing out. Like, this thing could have only come out in the 90s. This has Electric Blue Superman. This has Connor Hawk Green Arrow. This has Aztec. Like, this
Kyle Rayner Green Lantern.
Oh, Kyle, my Green Lantern. This uses the characters as it finds them, and it tells a great story. This is not a nostalgia-driven story like many of the ones you get today. This is just like, okay, you know what? These are where the characters are. I'm going to tell a great story with them. They're going to fight Lex Luthor and Darkseid and the Devil, and we're all going to Wonderworld, and I love it. This is a template for, I think, how every team book story should go. I can't say enough good things about it.
You know what, though? You say that it's not a nostalgia act, but it actually is. Because, like, Grant Morrison, the whole thing, the JLA brand was incredibly moribund. The 87 Wahaha era had petered out, and then the last, 40 or 50 issues of Justice League America, then, in Justice League Europe, Extreme Justice, all of those things, last 40 or 50 issues of Justice League America, these did not register. Nobody cared. It's a dead brand. And Grant Morrison's, listen, it's not a nostalgia act in that, he does anything all over again or whatever, but it's a nostalgia act. He's like, let's just get the biggest and fucking baddest, the guys that you think would be in the Justice League, and let's put them back in the Justice League. No offense to, Metamorpho or Nucleon or the Tasmanian Devil, but that's not who people think of as the Justice League. Let's redo it big time the way, with those guys, and I'll make it larger than life. So the nostalgia isn't necessarily in the stories told, but it is in this back to basics Justice League, which, honestly, there's a quote, I don't know it verbatim, but he was like, if I'd asked the day before the day after, they'd have said no. For what I just got, it was perfect. This one moment, they were okay with it, because this is something they had fought against. DC's editorship had gotten really fiefdom style again, like it was in the 60s. But now you had Mike Carlin in the Superman books, and Danny O'Neill was in charge of the Batman books, and a lot of guys who had the books, they didn't like their characters to be in the Justice League. It took forever for Superman to get in the Justice League after the Crisis and stuff. So I think this was kind of a nostalgia back to basics, where who cares about these editorial fiefdoms? We're putting the guys in the Justice League that should be in the Justice League.
JLA Rock of Ages hits the shelves, like I said, July. It's late July, 1997. Written by Grant Morrison, penciled by Howard Porter, inked by John Dell III, lettered by Kenny Lopez, and colored by Pat Garrahy. So to kind of set the groundwork here, what we need to do is give you an idea of who is on the JLA roster at this time. Dean kind of already covered a little bit. We're talking some of the biggest and the best that have been there, but there are a few modifications. Specifically, we'll just start with the biggest one you'll probably notice, and that is the Electric Blue Superman.
I always want to call him Midnight Blue Superman because of that song. He doesn't really look Midnight Blue at all, though. That's not... No, he's very bright blue, electro blue.
What happened here? So I know all about the death of Superman. I know when he died. I know when he came, the return of Superman. What was the thing that occurred that turned him into this electric hero?
The reason that's given in the story is that since Superman is solar powered, he just as a natural type of Kryptonian physiology, he would eventually evolve into a full energy being. So he has a containment suit built by Star Labs based on the future technology of Booster Gold. And he's basically given the ability, almost like Shazam, to turn into this electric blue energy creature that is held together by a super suit, and then back to a completely normal, no power, can get shot human being Clark Kent. And the whole thing does not last very long and is literally hand woven away in a crossover involving some MacGuffins called the Millennium Giants. And then the only time it's ever referenced again that I know of is Grant mentions it in All-Star Superman when they try to explain why Superman can survive living in the heart of the sun. The line is something along the lines of, well, you're solar powered, you were eventually going to turn into energy anyway. And it's Grant's way of saying every Superman story happened to this version of the character, including that time he was made of what appears to be Blue Mountain Dew.
It also seems like, again, this is a nostalgia act without actually being a nostalgia act, because way back in the day, Superman under the Mort Weisinger era got exposed to some kryptonite, I want to say, and he split into Superman Red and Superman Blue, and they like did things, and that's where this eventually ends up. There's a Superman Red and Energy Superman Blue, and like you said, I don't remember how it works with the Millennium Giants, but that's what makes Superman, you know, our boy again. And you're right, it doesn't last long, but it does feel like more kind of you know, again, nostalgia without being actual, without not necessarily without being nostalgic, but it's like, let's take an idea and let's spin it around. You know, let's, you know, and I think that's all it was. I can't say for sure, but I think it was like, what if there was Superman Red and Superman Blue again? How would we get there? And this is the path that they chose.
All right. Next up is Batman. Doesn't seem like too far from the norm here for me for
Just
Batman.
Around.
Yeah. It seems
doing Batman stuff.
Member of the Justice League, helping them out, you know, hanging out on the Watchtower, doing Batman stuff.
Being unnecessarily unfriendly.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. This is the Tim Burton Batman. Like, for whatever that matters, like, this is jet black, not nice to anyone in particular, like gold symbol around the thing, but this is very much like Batmania Batman. Like, this is not gray Kevin Conroy version of the character. This is gruff. He actually doesn't even get all that much to do in this one, other than one really cool scene in the Batcave.
I think it also has a touch of the old world's finest super team thrown in, because the only guy he's really respectful to or nice to is Superman. Like, you know, which is odd because everywhere else you would see these guys interact, people tried to play them up as frenemies, for lack of a better term. But here it seemed like they actually got along. They had an actual respect for one another that Batman doesn't extend to anybody else. How you mean to Kyle Rayner? The guy's crying.
We then have Aquaman, who is sporting a hook on his hand, Harpoon. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Harpoon. You're right. So, I mean,
Peter David would punch you in the face.
I don't need that. I really don't need that.
He goes, it's a harpoon, not a hook. A hook is stupid. A harpoon is cool. Listen, buddy, they're either both stupid or they're both cool. You like, I don't, you know, what the fuck are you talking about?
Good point. Yes. And then Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern. Then we have Wally West, The Flash. Connor Hawke, Green Arrow. And then this is, like I said earlier, this is the dark spot for me, Aztec. So who wants to explain?
Ultimate Man.
Help me out here. What's up with Aztec?
He's a Grant Morrison creation. He had his own title. I think it goes 10 issues. And it's a great comic book about a young superhero. It's very much in that, like, Ditko Spider-Man, New Warriors feel, guy trying to find his way in a world a lot larger than him. He's funded by a thing called the Q Foundation, because supposedly an ancient Incan or Aztec god is going to come back and just destroy everything, and he is being trained and programmed to be able to stop that from occurring. And there's more to it than that, and Darry may be able to fill in some more blanks, but in a nutshell, that's how I understand it. And we'll get some revelations about that during Rock of Ages.
I think the single sentence pitch was Aztec is a Silver Age hero that got stuck in the modern age. So he was raised in a cult in South America. So he is very wide-eyed. He doesn't understand how the modern world works in big cities and whatnot. But he's great at everything because he was trained to, as Dean mentioned, he was trained to fight the dark god that's coming. So he's a great doctor. He's a great philosopher. He's in great shape. He's very pretty. You know, he's physically capable. He knows how to disarm nuclear weapons, everything you would need in a superhero story. But when he comes to the city, he has no idea how to interact with anyone. So a lot of the comedy in his own book is from he pretends to be a doctor. He gets a job. He gets all this other stuff. But he's constantly running up against very modern stereotypes. And it's supposed to be like a fish out of water story. But yeah, it didn't even make 12 issues. But Morrison was able to move his story over to JLA. And it does get finished here. Though I will point out in this story, we see a character called Azteca, which is his legacy hero, for lack of a better term. And she has recently showed up in the comics. I believe Steve Orlando introduced her. So, you know, it's not just us who remember this story fondly.
Okay.
No, it's just us.
We're the only ones. JLA Watchtower. I just kind of want to throw this out here because we got a couple space-borne locations that are happening here. The Watchtower's out there. That's where a lot of the action is going to take place. And then there's another locale in space we're going to talk about here in just a second, because I'm going to bring up the Injustice Gang. The Injustice Gang, all right, led by one Lex Luthor. Also alongside Lex Luthor is the Joker, Dr. Light, Jem, the unknown alien, not Jem is excitement. Ooh, Jem.
No, but there are holograms, so you could very well be like
yeah.
us, Jem and the holograms over here. But no, it's Jem, son of Saturn, not Jem, holder of synergy. But let's be honest, man. When it comes to Jem and the holograms, the Misfits are all like, our songs are better. They are. The Misfits songs are better.
I won't argue.
They just are. They just are. Pizzazz can fucking shred.
Then we have Ocean Master, who's hanging out there with Lex Luthor. So Lex Luthor's cobbled all these guys together. Mirror Master and Cersei. So if you're recognizing these names, these are names of iconic villains that are usually... Okay, well...
What do you mean? What are you talking about? These are all like arch enemies. I mean, they may not be iconic in a greater sense, but like they are all arch nemesis of like, you know, their Justice League counterparts.
Can I say, first of all, I have never read another story with Cersei other than literally the Odyssey. But also,
she's the main bad guy in War of the Gods.
No, I know.
She's a bad guy a lot in Wonder Woman. It's your fault. You just don't read Wonder Woman. You're a bad person.
That is, you are 100% true.
The Perez Wonder Woman is good stuff, and later on, you know, you get the Messenger Loeb stuff. Like Cersei shows up a lot there. You just because something doesn't happen, you know, you don't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. You fucking solipsis.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm ragging on you. I understand though, you know what you're saying, but yeah.
Dr. Light became very famous after this story, but not for anything good, and certainly for nothing he did in this story. So
okay.
I just like the idea that Luthor woke up one morning and is like, well, Superman's got a team. I can put together a team.
I should have a team. He just has a team to fucking rub it in my face.
Yeah, exactly.
Have friends doing things. I want to have friends and do things. And the thing we're going to do is we're going to make his friends look bad. We're going to beat them up. What a fucking schlub, man. Just go be rich. That's what I say to so many billionaires out like J.K. Rowling, transphobic as fucking shit. Shut up and go be rich. All you have to do is like not do anything other than be rich. Lex Luthor just jealous of anything, anybody that like isn't like directly related to him. Just go be rich. Just go buy Nairobi, man. Just go, you know, go buy fucking Singapore, buy Iowa. I don't fucking know, but just go be rich. What the fuck's wrong with this dude? Leave us the fuck alone. I'm trying to live.
If you told me that there was a Silver Age Superman story where Lex Luthor bought Iowa and for like 32 pages he owned the state and everyone was both like very, very happy with the decision and mad they had to listen to him, I would totally believe. He's always doing like weird real estate deals, right? Like
I feel like somehow he would also be like, I bought Iowa so I could win the state fair's biggest corn cob, you know, in the Silver Age. And Superman's like, I can't let this happen. You're like, what could possibly be in here? Then you read it, nothing to do with any of that. Like he's just you know,
not a single corn kernel anywhere.
No corn, no cobs, just him buying Iowa. Very boring real estate transaction.
Damn it.
Superman contested it in court. I think it was a good choice. I think all of these villains are iconic within their respective spheres. You know, only like Luthor and fucking Joker was in a greater sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, poor Dr. Light. Also, it's weird because before this, he was like most famous for like getting his ass kicked by the Teen Titans like again and again and again and again. Like what a jerk.
I think what I meant when I was trying to say they weren't iconic is Lex sees himself as the only one who matters. So he gets 6 supervillains who aren't particularly, or like 5 supervillains and a captive alien who aren't particularly well known on their own. Like there's not likely to be a Mirror Master or Ocean Master ongoing book, but like you need someone to fight Aquaman and you need someone to fight, I don't know, the Flash. So he gets
he's a Flash villain, one of the first.
Yeah. But it's just like Superman would say, well, these are my equals. You know, these are all iconic characters. And Lex is like, no, these are the first 6 guys who answered the cell phone. I could beat you with 6 other guys. These are the 6 I chose. I am going to beat you no matter what. Like it's just more like Lex doesn't really care who's standing next to him. He just wants someone. He's like, you got 6 guys. I got 6 guys, and my 6 guys may have fought your 6 guys once. You watch.
We're going to beat you. You're going to hate it.
We are going to beat you in a fair game of 5-on-5 basketball with one replacement. Like it's like fucking Mario Sports or something where like you play Bowser and Peanuts. Like all of a sudden.
I feel so bad for the Martian Manhunter. The guy has been around since the 50s and he has no rogues gallery. he's fought hundreds of supervillains in that time, but none of them are memorable. So for this, Grant Morrison had to dig out like Gem from Saturn and never even named the character in these 6 issues. It's like, come on, man, you couldn't have come up with someone for John to fight. I felt so bad about that.
Well, he is going to become a guy that Martian Manhunter fights later in his own series, and he's going to be a supporting character as well in that series. So it's a good call, but like Martian Manhunter's never had a book. Like at this point, like he's never, he's ever been in backups. And honestly, I love the Martian Manhunter. Don't get me wrong, but like I always identify him as a JLA guy. Like to the point where like if a Justice League doesn't have him, I wonder how legitimate it could possibly be. As far as his own stuff, like he had like a couple miniseries, a bunch of backups, but there's like an evil Martian that he fights, a white Martian, and then the Hyper Clan shows up in New World Order or whatever. But like, other than that. I mean, it's not really what he's designed to do. Maybe he should sell more Twinkies. Put him in some Twinkie ads.
Hey,
there you
do
go.
it. I did want to say also the other space locale I mentioned earlier is the Injustice Gang's headquarters. It's out there. It's like part asteroid, part ship. I don't know how to describe that. All I know is like you can see the ship part and it's covered by like this skull-looking rock. It looks badass, but just be aware. The Injustice Gang are hanging out in orbit in some kind of ship. All right.
I wouldn't call it a ship so much as an album cover that somehow escaped into the real world.
Perfect.
You know, it's funny that the way you describe Aztec is also more or less the way you would describe Connor Hawke at this point. Maybe slightly worldlier, but like he grew up in a monastery, getting fucking trained hardcore to where he could do anything. Not just good with the bow, but like he's a super ninja guy. And like also everybody finds him attractive, but he doesn't really understand like their modern world. Not to the extent of Aztec, but certainly they are peas in a pod together.
All right, parts 1 and 2 of JLA Rock of Ages. We open the story, and you guys feel free to hop in. Whatever, you know.
I'm like a fucking kangaroo over here. I'm ready to
do it. We open the story with an imposter JLA, the JLA Revenge Squad, attacking Star City. The real JLA heads to face them and finds that the doppelgangers are made of hard light holograms. But the mystery remains who is powering them. After defeating them, Martian Manhunter heads into space to investigate, but also finds that there's a new threat of a large energy wave heading towards Earth. Focused on the immediate threat, Batman sends Green Lantern into space to see if he can find the source of the holograms. Once out there, Green Lantern tracks them to a point, but he cannot see Lex Luthor and the rest of the Injustice Gang's satellite due to some telepathic trickery. Meanwhile, out in space, Martian Manhunter finds the energy wave, but is overwhelmed and can only warn his teammates that it is coming.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is that energy wave? Because, like, the next issue, Martian Manhunter is just hanging out. What was it? What was going on? I can't tell what it is or what it was, like, in regard to everything else.
Yeah, it doesn't really pay off in this story, but Darry, does it pay off later?
I mean, is it stuff that's regarding, like, Mageddon stuff, like, later on?
No. It's the Genesis crossover.
Okay, it's the Genesis crossover. I was going to guess that next, but I didn't know if JLA had their own tie-in issues or not. I guess they don't. So because some titles did. Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
so
it's
the God Wave. It's the God Wave coming through the universe.
It's the God Wave, and this isn't me being weird. Like literally, there's a piece of exposition where Superman says, "Well, now that we've dealt with, I think it's Ares, who turns out to be the big bad there." And says the Genesis wave. That was that.
Oh, I remember that now. But like, I did not piece that together for some reason. Because there's so much cosmic shit that happens in this. I kept waiting to be like, so what was this? What was going on? So it's a terrible time for it, honestly. It's really bad timing, and it's kind of bad editorial planning on someone's part. I don't know whose, but yeah, the Genesis crossover was something that John Byrne came up with. It's out of the Fourth World books, and I can't remember the exact particulars of it, but basically this wave of energy like goes across all of everything back and forth and recreates ages and makes heroes, and it's going to destroy everything, and the heroes stop it somehow. And again, it may be one. I've never read it because it, like, on the surface, it's not entertaining. It doesn't sound good.
The intent of the story Genesis is basically saying, why is it that so many different supernatural things that don't seem to have anything to do with each other exist in the DC universe? Not just on Earth, but throughout all of known creation. So John Byrne's suggestion was, well, there's a wave of super energy. I don't know how else to describe it. And coming in contact with it can change everything. And it started at the center of the universe and it went out. And the impetus of the Genesis crossover is that it hit the edge of known space and now it's coming back. And on the way back, it's causing chaos because it's changing things again. So, a planet of Superman or Green Lantern or any of the things out there coming in contact with this again, it's throwing.
Took away the windy Supermar.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a really weird story. It devolves into being a plot by Ares. And then the problem with it, as far as Rock of Ages, is Darkseid is actually in it. And Darkseid has a pretty definitive end that is mentioned in the very last issue of Rock of Ages. So Morrison, very interestingly, kind of sidesteps that by giving us an evil Metron, and you never actually see Darkseid in the present. So I thought they did a very good job. The fact that you guys didn't need to read Genesis and still enjoy this, I think, is proof of how good Morrison is at this.
I think they did a good job on that end, but like this is bad overall, like editor-in-chief stuff. Yeah. Because this is honestly like DC's best-selling title at the moment. You want your crossover to work, and it's not going to be a part of this. And let me tell you, I wouldn't have fucking jettisoned Rock of Ages to make it a part of it either. But like this should have been something that was explained ahead of time. Let me also say that this is the beginning of the end of John Byrne. As far as like a creative talent or anybody you should pay attention to or anybody or somebody who has something to offer, anything regarding superheroes other than really cool, like commissioned art pinups and stuff. Like if you want him to draw you, Ultra the multi-alien fighting the new warriors, hey, that's the guy to get you to do it. If you want him to write or draw everything from now on that he does, with the exception of Blood of the Demon, which he draws, it's just not very good. It doesn't land in my eyes. Like Spider-Man Chapter 1, his Doom Patrol, all that shit. Yeah, Spider-Man Chapter 1's especially bad because John Byrne's always like, people come in here and change stuff. They don't understand. You shouldn't change it. But Ditko and Kirby and Stan Lee had it all right. So what does he do when he gets Spider-Man Chapter 1? Changes goddamn everything, makes everything connected like it's 1989 Tim Burton's Batman, which might not have mattered if it didn't goddamn suck. So this is the beginning of the end of John Byrne. As far as like Genesis sucks, the next step will suck. The last thing like I said, I think it's Blood of the Demon and the last issue of John Byrne's Fourth World or Jack Kirby's Fourth World that he does. It's a retelling of Superman going to Supertown and talking to the Forever People #1. That's solid. That's it. This is it as far as he goes. This is a bad idea, and I'm glad they kept it out of here. But I'm also can't believe that they did keep it out of their #1 selling title. Like that's wild.
Huh. Because I was like, well, why in the world did they stick it in here? And of course, back in the day, they probably had to address it in some way. So I'm sure that's exactly why.
Sure,
they had to be
exactly.
like, hey.
Like Darry said, Grant Morrison and Howard Porter here, they did a great job getting it in here and making it not really affect anything. There's also an item of damnation for the crossover. You put this into your #1 selling title, the best thing you have going for your superhero universe at this moment, and it doesn't mean anything to it. Congratulations. What a shit fuck crossover.
Look, I didn't read.
The only Genesis you need to care about is Phil Collins, baby. That's what I'm talking about. I can't dance, and he knows it.
I didn't read Highfalutin Hero Illustrated, but down with the plebes in Wizard Magazine, there were many, many house ads for Genesis. And I can tell you, they push that book pretty heavily. So I'm sure every
point, Hero Illustrated's gone, and I don't have a comic book store. So the only way I'm keeping up with anything comic related is buying Wizard at Walmart or Kroger, which is still, that still gets stocked with the magazines. And I remember the ads for Genesis, and I remember them I didn't pick JLA up off this. I could not pick it up, but I remember they were really, if they were any farther behind it, they'd have been like one of those tugboats that got that barge out of the fucking Nile River a few years back to jammed it all up. They were way behind, and rightfully so. This is great shit.
So while the JLA tries to figure out who was behind the JLA Revenge Squad, they are again needed for a crisis in California as part of the ocean just appears in San Fernando Valley. Superman and Martian Manhunter head into space and believe they have finally found the Injustice Gang satellite, but realize it's a hard-light hologram trap controlled by the mind of the Joker. When Martian Manhunter adjusts his brain so he can think like the Joker, the pair are able to find a way out. That is until Superman...
One of Grant Morrison's favorite tricks.
Really now?
He uses that trick a lot, yeah. He'll later on do Marvel Knights 4, and he has Reed Richards like super stretch his brain so he can see like all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Alex Ross does a similar thing with Reed Richards' brain around this time in Earth X, so he can use Cerebro, like he stretches his brain to where it's like a mutant. So like Grant Morrison does it a couple other times too. I forget where, but brain stretching was big around this time.
Some good old brain stretch.
Hey, listen, your brain ain't working? Pull it apart like it was goddamn putty. Stretch it out. Way it works.
That's perfect. Martian Manhunter adjusts his brain so he can think like the Joker. The pair are able to find a way out. That is until Superman accidentally triggers a bomb that unleashes a massive explosion.
And the bomb looks like a CD player, right?
It is.
It is a CD player.
It is a CD.
I feel like that is the penalty for all of us stealing all of those CDs from BMG and like Columbia House during the 90s. He is like the, the savior of that. Like Superman and Martian Manhunter died so that we could have our.
Oh, that's horrible.
Is it? Because I feel like I see you laughing. You're laughing a little
all my
bit.
sins have been forgiven.
All your sins have been forgiven. Chris Bailey knows.
Chris Bailey does know.
He's off the hook now. Thank you, Clark.
Oh, shit.
Prashant Jones so loved the world and music.
As far as sacrilege goes, we got this, and then we got Ghost Rider 2099, Jesus with the laser chainsaw.
I would like to see Jesus with the laser chainsaw fight this JLA. That would be a pretty good.
Wow, let's make it happen. Resolving things.
You hear me, Grant? You hear us? That's the kind of shit that you'd write, so do it.
Do it. Resolving things in California, Green Arrow and Green Lantern take a breather at a local diner and are approached by Cersei in disguise, as of course. And Injustice,
quotes, right? Disguise in quotes. Like there's fucking this lady.
I don't think they read the Perez run either because she's not exactly hiding herself here.
She's over there reading Ulysses. Like she's all dressed in like, what do you fuck? Obviously, this lady's a supervillain of some kind.
And Kyle's just like, get her number, man. Like, I relate to Kyle here because he's just sitting there having a cup of coffee in full Green Lantern regalia, and his friends have an existential crisis. He's like, the purple-haired woman, get her number. But you're right. They've been in the Justice League long enough. They should know she's almost absolutely an evil supervillain. Can you please? And he's like, no. Go for it. Go for it.
They're young men, and young men have made a lot worse choices. You know what I mean? I made worse choices as a young man. I ain't going to fault Kyle or Connor for making a bad choice there.
She's a little manipulative, I guess you'd say. I mean, she...
No.
Yeah.
Not Cersei.
Believe it or not.
The goddess of witchcraft. Shit.
She lays out this plan. She's trying to kind of get into their heads a little bit and turn them against Superman. Connor seems to be listening. Green Lantern gets up. He heads back to the Watchtower. Now, the Injustice Gang headquarters, Lex manipulates a crystal. We don't know what this thing is. It's crazy looking like stone of some sort that allows him to control people's minds. So he's kind of messing with this thing. So you're kind of wondering what in the world this thing is. Now, the JLA Watchtower, Metron and his beautiful eyebrows, not eyebrows, I don't know. But we'll leave that for a later discussion.
And
Metron appears, recruiting Aquaman and Flash to help in finding the Philosopher's Stone, a powerful artifact that has apparently been lost in time. At the Batcave, Bruce Wayne is ahead of the game, though, knowing that Lex is attempting a hostile takeover, so Lex's plan is to overtake the JLA and, lead them?
No, I think his plan is oh, God, who is that guy? Lee Iacocca used to destroy companies this way. Ron Perlman, with Marvel, they would, you could do these things that he's talking about doing. You make a figurehead look bad. You recruit the young guys. Okay. I forget the other part, but this is how you can destroy a company, and then you can do whatever you want with the remains. I don't think he wants to necessarily lead it. Let's be honest. Lex Luthor doesn't want to do anything other than look at himself in a mirror while this mirror talks back to him and tell him how great he is, but not a reflection of him saying it, but somehow his reflection is just, oh man, Lex, you are fucking great. Let me do it.
Right.
I read it as Lex's plan is that at the end of the 3 days, there will not be a Justice League. Yeah, they'll have been so thoroughly defeated that they will decide it's just not worth it. Because again, Lex's whole thing, as far as I understand it, is he can't get it through his head that someone with superpowers, especially Superman with absolute power, would be all noble and all good. That's just he's thinking, no, you have a scam here. I just haven't figured it out, because I would have a scam if I were you. So the goal here is just, well, the Justice League is going to break up and we're going to reveal them as the hypocrites they are, and the world will go back to normal. And next time, a world-threatening foe shows up, it won't be 7 high and mighty people on the moon. I'll deal with it.
I'll deal with it.
Yeah, don't worry.
They'll come to me. I'll do a press conference at the end of this that says, "Look at how terrible they were this whole time."
Yeah.
And guys, maybe the superheroes that weren't involved, like maybe we should not trust the Titans and Captain Marvel as well. And and from here on, the narrative belongs to him, and that's the whole idea. That like, however the world will be controlled, he'll be the one controlling. And right now, he feels like he has no control. These guys are better than him, and Superman's better than him. And how could anybody be better than him? I got to take this down.
Well, Bruce Wayne's sitting down there in the Batcave, and he's like, Lex Luthor don't know about no Bruce Wayne stuff.
He's down there in the Batcave, right? And like Robin is down there, and he's like taping himself up. He's like, me and Nightwing, blah, blah, blah. And then Batman's like, grammar, Tim. And then he starts the sentence with a preposition.
I'm glad you caught that.
I'm not a grammar guy. Like when I was younger, like when I was between 8 and 18, and this is a way for me to like salve my own self-esteem and feel better and smarter than somebody. Be like, oh, that's a semicolon. That's where that goes. It's like, yeah, that was big. As a grown-up, I don't give a shit. Language is a tool, and as long as I understand you, it's doing its job. Nothing really matters as far as that goes. Language will change and evolve, and who knows what it will look like in 200 years.
Oh, man.
But Batman is apparently, he's one of those grammar people, but then when he commits a faux pas, it's no big deal. Tim Rice, kick him in the nuts. Go over there and kick him in the bat nuts.
Jason Todd would have, I'll tell you that much.
Jason Todd shot him in the bat nuts.
Right.
Boom, boom, old man.
Bruce Wayne looks to defeat Lex at his own game here, so he's kind of ahead of him, and his plan involves the antics of one Plastic Man.
Yeah.
So Plastic Man is, I mean, my goodness, you said you loved him, Darry. Right?
Oh, yeah. So I had no idea about anything about Plastic Man until I read this. Grant Morrison added Plastic Man to the Justice League because they were like, the team needs a funny guy. There's no one on this team to make you laugh. Plastic Man is a golden age original character. He is not a legacy character, but he's one of the originals. Il O'Brien, created by the late great Jack Cole. He was awesome back in the day. He was very successful. DC bought him eventually with the rest of his line. But adding him here I thought was so great because, he is an incredibly powerful shapeshifter. He's also just completely out of his mind. And the fact that Batman realizes like, oh, I need someone who they're not going to be able to plan around. I need a crazy person is really good. And then if you read any of his solo adventures, he's a reformed criminal, and he eventually even works for the FBI. So the little nods in this issue about how he actually figures out that Batman is Matches Malone, and he actually does know what's going on, and he's able to outsmart Cersei later on. That's the whole idea of like, yeah, he's invulnerable and he's funny and he's a shapeshifter, but at the end of the day, he is a trained law enforcement agent. Like he's not Booster Gold or something. Like if Plastic Man's on your case, you're probably going to jail. So I like that about the character.
I think another reason he was added, if memory serves, is again nostalgia without nostalgia. One of the stalwarts of the Justice League from like the late '60s until the end of JLA Detroit, and then primary member of Justice League Europe, Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man. But I think what Grant Morrison saw was, I love Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man, him and Sue going town to town, solving mysteries, shaking his nose. But like Plastic Man's iconic, like Plastic Man has never stopped being a household name. Like, I mean, even at times when like Plastic Man didn't have a comic, didn't have a cartoon, we all knew the stretching guy, Plastic, you can stretch over here, Plastic Man. And so I think Grant Morrison, again, in a way, you hit that nostalgia, but you do it in a different way. And you arguably upgrade it because Plastic Man is a name that belongs with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and Green Arrow and The Flash in a way that Elongated Man may not to the greater society. I'm not shitting on him. I think Elongated Man is perfectly great in the JLA. And I think it's funny when they're both in the JLA and they're just like mad at each other. It's like, who needs you fucking redundant rubber man, and shit like that. But I do get for a greater sense of myth, Plastic Man's better. And let's be honest, that's what the DC universe is. Marvel universe are heroes and legends. The DC universe at its apex, at the top level, they're myths. They're gods. Like Batman is a god. Superman is a god in a way that like Captain America and Iron Man are not gods. They are people who have elevated. Thor's kind of the bridge, but you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's good to get Plastic Man in there because he has that mythic feel that, you know, has been here forever and will be here forever. And like you said, the Jack Cole shit, everybody, if you get a chance, go look at you don't even have to read them. Just go like flip through the Golden Age Jack Cole stuff. It is mind blowing, the stuff that this guy was doing in like 1941. That, you know, there's still stuff that guys aren't doing as well today.
Cole was a master. He really was. Yeah.
In a way, like it's a lot like the Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange, Otherworld, Dark Dimension. Like everybody kind of apes that. When it comes to stretching and twitching and, you know, shape shifting with the stretchy guys, they all take it from Jack Cole.
Yeah.
So that's the end of our first two parts to this story. The cover to like the first part of this series. I remember I was like, okay, here we go. I'm hopping in the Rock of Ages and I'm looking at this cover, and you want to talk about a disturbing look on the faces of this faux JLA. It took me a few seconds to be like, what am I looking at before I got into the story? Because I thought, oh, this is the JLA. Look at why do they have these creepy smiles on their faces? And then I started to realize they have skulls on their chests. I'm like, oh, what am I getting into here? Has the Revenge Squad showed up before this? Okay, all right. So this is something new.
There's been a group called the Superman Revenge Squad, but it's different.
Okay, all right. And I will say that, you know, Electric Blue Superman with the skull on his chest. I was like, that is shades of the Punisher right there.
Here comes Electro, the Punisher, right?
Right. But anyway, the cover creeped me out. It was great. When you look at like the face of Aquaman, I mean, he looks like he's trying to smile, but he can't. And to try and get
that's just real Aquaman too.
To try and kind of get that creepy look on their faces, I just thought was a real success done by Howard Porter here. I think he did a great job kind of making you look at this and go, what is going on? Why do they look so creepy? I mean, I had a good time these first two. We talked about the CD. That was another note that I had here where Superman's like, oh, let me just read what's on the CD because he's got these electric powers, and then he proceeds to blow himself up, and put that in quotes because we'll find out later that's not the case.
That example there, that it not being the case with like Superman, you know, changing the energy and everything, you got to give Grant Morrison a lot of credit. He just doesn't fucking miss a beat. This obviously wasn't his plan. When they're doing the pitch for JLA, be like, oh man, if like 8 or 9 issues in, Superman could be electric blue, that'd be great. Like, it wasn't his fucking idea, you know. But he rolls with it and just makes it work, and he uses the powers arguably more imaginatively than some of the ways that they're used in the core Superman books.
Right. That's kind of what I was
like
watching.
In one issue, he like moves the fucking moon.
Yeah.
I was watching for, I think, the first story I ever read with Electric Blue Superman in it. So I was kind of like trying to get a good idea of what his power set was and the kind of things that he can do. And yeah, you're right. Grant Morrison did a great job of like showcasing some of the very like diverse things that he can do with his new powers.
All right. Well, first things first, if you want a mission statement for Rock of Ages, and really for most of Grant Morrison's work, halfway through the first issue, Superman and Green Lantern are talking to each other. They've just defeated the hologram Batplane, and Kyle asks, why are they breaking down into little Batplanes? And they're flying around. And Superman responds, it was a hologram, Kyle. Each fragment of a hologram contains all the information of the whole, but on a smaller scale. That's this entire story. That's what the Philosopher's Stone is. That's what this entire arc is. It's everything that Morrison wants to tell you they love about the Justice League as a whole. It is exactly how the Philosopher's Stone, which is actually taken from an earlier Jack Kirby comic where it's referred to as the Whirligog, works. It's the entirety of reality compressed into a tiny rock. It's why Metron wants it so badly, because it could potentially tell you everything. So that mission statement is very important to remember, because it's this way of saying that if you understand the micro and the macro, you're going to understand that they're the same thing and how they relate to each other. And this comes back again when the character of Megaddon shows up in Grant Morrison's final arc, World War III, where they are the anti-sun. And it's not enough to just have the Justice League. You have to have everyone become the Justice League to defeat It's referred to as
literally everyone. Also,
literally every single
everyone
person
in the world gets superpowers for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. That book came out after 1999, so we will not cover it. But if you are listening to this and have not read it, Grant Morrison and Howard Porter's World War III, I cannot recommend it strongly enough. It's also kind of a sequel to this. So if you like this and wanted to know when's the next time are we going to see Wonder World and Mageddon and all the other stuff, yeah, you can skip right ahead to World War III. It's a great read.
It's funny that you mentioned him being the anti-sun, because that reminds me when he did Doom Patrol, there was the anti-god. So that's apparently a thing that good old Grant loves, that whole anti-whatever.
Yeah, he's got himself a little checklist now. I mean, you're figuring him out.
But this is good though, because this, it seems cliched, but this is actually something that I like that Grant Morrison does. They came up with the concept of the decreator and the anti-creator and all this stuff in Doom Patrol, a book people were reading, but not like JLA. So when they were looking around and saying, well, I need a villain who is of the scale of the big seven, what am I going to do? They reinvented it. And it's not even just Mageddon, the anti-sun. There's also Solaris, the tyrant sun. Like, Morrison has tropes they like going back to. But again, I feel like they keep reinventing it and pushing it back. Their ultimate story, Final Crisis, also deals with a very similar concept. They bring back the anti-monitor as the vampire monitor, and it's literally consuming all of fiction. So it's the same idea, but it's reinterpreted for the different stories that they find themselves telling, even though from a certain point of view, it's all the same story. So I agree. It's cliched, but it's always reinvented for the story you're trying to tell. It's like reinforcing a theme in a good work of art. It's like, we don't just mention this thing once and hope you got it. We always try to tie back to it so you can get the stanzas of a song. That's how I look at it anyway.
I don't think it's cliched. I think they go back to it because the same way Starlin goes back to Thanos, because that's the best way for Starlin to convey the stories that he's trying to do. I actually think they get it right in a way. A lot of people think that, I don't know how to say this exactly, anti isn't opposite. People think a lot of times that an anti-sun would just be like a dark sun. That's not really what it does. It inverts the sun to where as the sun creates light and creates energy, it takes it away. The opposite of the sun would be, something that use that energy in the opposite way. This just inverts it differently. They really get that anti stuff down. So I think it's good. I like it. And the decreator, anti-god, anti-sun, I'm always in.
I like it a lot too, because you see it here when the characters have to figure out exactly what anti-life is and why it's so bad. Kirby was responsible for many incredible things, but at the end of the day, he was a good writer. He wasn't the greatest dialoguist, but he was a good writer. And anti-life is so crushing because it's basically depression. It's the absolute worst. It's weaponized mental illness. It's this idea that someone can whisper something to you and your mind will immediately say, oh, that person's right. Life has no meaning. I have no meaning. I have no worth. I might as well just follow whatever they tell me. It's really dark. I always tell people that I really do believe it's Kirby working out his PTSD from serving in World War II as a soldier.
Kirby has never said that verbatim, that it's working out PTSD, but he has said that Darkseid and Hitler this.
Yeah, right. No, you're 100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're right. You're probably right. He's working out his PTSD. He wouldn't have used those terms, a gentleman of his generation. And also we were just learning about PTSD, but that's absolutely what it was. He was working out his fear. And I get it as somebody with PTSD. I wasn't a Jewish person who was faced with the Holocaust in the 30s and 40s. Yeah. I didn't go fight, the Nazis like Kirby did, but that is my number one fear. I don't know if I can fear it the same way he does, he did, but my number one fear is the anti-life equation. I am very scared of fascism, and I see it everywhere, and I don't know what to do about it. I wish Kirby was here to tell me. It just is what it is, though. I feel like if you're reading this stuff, or you're reading Kirby's Force World, and you're not making correlations to things we're seeing, you're not reading it right. You're not getting what you're supposed to be entertained, because yes, space gods are mega punching each other and vaporizing one another with the Astro Force, but you're supposed to be worried about something else, and when you see it, you're supposed to do what you can. And I don't know what to do right now, but I'll figure it out. We'll all figure it out.
One of my favorite things about doing these podcasts is learning alongside you guys, and obviously have you guys put me on a learning tree every once in a while as well. Anti-life is one of those things that I've actually wondered about. Like, okay, as a concept, what the hell does this mean in comics? And I think what you gave there as an explanation really does make sense, Darry. So I appreciate at least a little bit of knowledge I've got here.
Listen, it took me a very long time. It's not an easy concept. Kirby had this very difficult problem where he couldn't slow down enough to tell you what the hell he was talking about. His sidekicks, for lack of a better word, Mark Evanier and his cohorts, they talk about watching him work. And by the time he had gotten one idea down, he'd moved on to 3 others. He didn't, he wasn't like we are today where, a writer or a creator will take an idea and really let it breathe and put it out there, maybe let it overstay its welcome. In a Kirby comic, it comes in, it shows up, it changes everything, and he moves on to the next thing. And the next thing may not be good. And someone like Grant Morrison is reading all of this and going, what the hell's the anti-life equation? And why didn't you spend a little bit more time on it? So, Morrison does 3 or 4 major stories about it. I mentioned before, but the story Final Crisis is basically a retelling of a lot of the elements of Final Crisis, expanded and writ large to warrant a crossover with every single book DC was publishing at the time. But it comes down to the same fundamental element, which is Darkseid doesn't want to conquer the world because he wants us. Darkseid's going to conquer the world just because he can, because once he has anti-life, it's described as a mathematical formula that proves with absolute certainty that life is not worth living. And the idea is that once he gets it, and he knows it's on Earth because that was the MacGuffin in the original story. That's why Darkseid kept coming here to mess with us, because we were like, there's something here. These monkeys, they figured it out. They don't know they figured it out, but they figured it out. Ultimate despair, and I'm going to get it from them. And the concept here is that once the Philosopher's Stone is destroyed, he comes back, he figures it out, and the first thing he does is, well, congratulations, you guys are ground zero. And he takes over Earth just because he can, and then that expands out to the entire universe. And he has the great line later on where he says, Darkseid will know fear when the universe is Darkseid. And it's this idea where, like, he is obsessed with fascism and control the way Joker is with madness. There's no end game. They just know they want more of it. And I think that's really good. That ties back to what Dean was saying, which is, when the DC characters are working at their absolute best, they are myths. They are personifications of very key concepts. They're not supposed to be your neighbors. They're how you understand ideas like, honor and darkness and everything else. And in the Joker's case, madness, which is why, again, a guy with green hair is on a supervillain team alongside people who can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, because you need that. You need the ape of thought, biting at everyone's heels. So, but
another thing about the anti-life equation is it's been different things at different times. Like in Cosmic Odyssey, they said it was like a sentient being that like did its own thing, and like they defined it a different way in the mid '90s in the New Gods series that predates Jack Kirby's Fourth World. And then at different times, certain characters have known it, like in the old Fourth World in the 70s. Sonny Sumo was a character that knew the anti-life equation. Yeah. Mr. Miracle has canonically known the anti-life equation, which is probably why he can escape from everything.
Yeah.
I think it ties into that kind of thing. So the anti-life equation, honestly, in some ways, it's very malleable, and in some ways is very, very concrete. And that, but as long as it comes back to the fact that once it's in somebody's possession who shouldn't have it, it means the end of all sentient free will in the universe should this person or being decide to utilize it. That's what will happen regardless of what else it is. And the mathematical equation for it can be seen on Wikipedia. I'm not going to go look at it, but everybody should go. It's very long.
It's from Final Crisis. It's very long.
Yeah. Listen, when I used to trip acid, we used to make up math, and this is the kind of math we would make up. Yeah. We would write like hope divided by destiny times faith, to the third power. And like, so we would just, and it wouldn't mean anything, it meant something to us at the time. Grant Morrison also known for their forays into such things. So maybe we were just tapping the same thing, figuring the same things out. But yeah, like the anti-life equation can almost be what you need it to be at any given time, as long as it ends with the end of free will.
You make a very good point. Darkseid is a new god. He is the god of control, right? He wants to control everything. He wants, he's the god of fascism. His will is
because he's a scared baby.
Yeah, he's a terrified child. That's the point.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I laugh when these, grimdark movies present him as Thanos or Doom or someone. It's like, no, guys, the whole point of Darkseid is he's a spoiled royal who's looking for this one thing and he can't seem to find it. But Kirby was very good at this. He presented the god of freedom, who's Mr. Miracle, who's
Right.
why in his story that to Dean's point, he does come across the anti-life equation, and it's not that he just brushes it off, but he kind of processes it. And again, like going to therapy or doing whatever you need to do to get past a bad day, he figures it out and he gets past the other side, and he's like, oh, I understand what that's saying. But I don't agree. I understand what it's coming at, and it's the next thing. And the idea is that his sigil on his face and chest is the life equation, is the idea of like, I can free you from this, but I can't do it for you. All I can do is show you that, listen, this thing is telling you some pretty bad stuff, like your own brain on a very bad day. But it's not the only voice you have to listen to. And if we can work together on this, we can get to the other side, which is why every single time Darkseid does this, someone figures out a way to stop them. Because, even if you read this thing to Superman, give him enough time and he's going to be like, yeah, I don't know about that. I've had a pretty good life, and I'm gonna, as long as I keep fighting for my fellow man, I think I'll get back to it. So I do like that Darkseid has this absolute power, but he doesn't know what to do with it. And every time he gets it, someone comes back along and says, okay, yeah, you figured out absolute control. I figured out absolute freedom. We're going to let the people decide. And it's funny to watch in Rock of Ages how the gods fighting amongst themselves kind of interact with the mortals, and that's what they are. Even though, like, Superman and Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman are going to be alive forever, they're still mortals compared to these abstract concepts from New Genesis. So I really appreciate that. And then going back to the specific two issues that you mentioned, I love the Joker stuff. Again, I was mentioning how Martian Manhunter didn't have a really good foe before, but one of the things that always gets glossed over is Martian Manhunter is DC's most powerful psychic character. Marvel's got dozens of them from the X-Men, but the Martian Manhunter
you think
is
so? Is their most powerful psychic character?
Yes. Is he
Okay.
not?
Oh, well,
I mean, I'm trying to think. I get Captain Comet's up there, but Captain Comet and Martian Manhunter are very similar and have very similar powers.
Yeah. They came from the same period of time.
The same period of time, a little earlier. I'm trying to think of who their other, Raven's not really a psychic.
I mean,
I guess you're right. No, I mean, I wasn't trying to contradict you. I was just I'm having fun going through the roll call, the old hero Rolodex, as they call it.
I just said that because, Jean isn't just someone who woke up and they could hear the voices of their neighbors. Jean comes from a culture where being psychic.
That's how everybody talked. That's how that was normal. And he felt everybody die, from what I understand. So that's not great.
Yeah. Yeah, like he's not even necessarily the greatest psychic on Mars. Like he just comes here and he realizes we can't hear each other, and he's like, oh, okay, I got to be a little bit patient with you guys. But I love him fighting the Joker because everyone is always reacting to laughing gas and Harley Quinn and evil clowns with the Joker. And Martian Manhunter is like, wait a second, there's something wrong with his brain. I'm going to go in there. And I love the idea that the world's most powerful psychic goes into the Joker's mind and is like, that's exhausting. I don't know. He is really, truly mad. He's not just a little bit mad. He's a 10 out of 10. And I thought that was a good way of both giving Martian Manhunter something to do and showing why the Joker keeps showing up alongside these really powerful guys. I thought it was a great use of two characters who've been around, longer than my parents have been alive.
I also thought that was really cool because, like, the Joker is mentally ill. And, like, when I describe, I'm not quiet. Like, I'm bipolar, OCD, PTSD. And when I describe this to people are like, well, what's it like? I'm like, it's really tiring. Like, I'm hyper vigilant. I'm constantly thinking that something is going to hurt me. I'm constantly switching between, like, everything is great or everything is terrible. I have to stop myself from buying every toy that comes out because I'm obsessed to do it. And it's funny, on some level, but, like, that is my compulsion. Like, that's how it manifests itself. Yeah. I mean, it takes up a lot of time. It's very exhausting. And I thought that was a quiet comment on mental illness in and of itself, is that's one of the things, is it takes a lot out of you that if somebody's neurotypical, they can't understand it. With what we know about Grant Morrison, who is, come out as like non-binary and they go by they pronouns, maybe this is something they were struggling with at the time, because I know they also had issues with depression and stuff. So perhaps, I'm not saying that's what it was, but I felt seen in a way that I don't get seen in superhero comics a lot in regard to mental illness. That having said, I've killed a fewer people than the Joker. Not many, but a few.
If you want a story that deals with just the darkness people are capable of inflicting on themselves and others, Morrison wrote The Filth as a follow-up to The Invisibles, and it is the darkest comic book I have ever read. It has a very nice ending, but it is rough. I definitely think there's some of that stuff there. But the other thing I'll mention is, towards the end of the second issue, Kyle Rayner is sent on this little jaunt throughout the universe. These are two very dense pages where Kyle experiences like 10 different storylines, and he keeps going and he keeps going and he keeps going. I don't know if this was intentional, but I feel like this was one of the many things that Grant Morrison did during their JLA run, where they were trying to say, Kyle Rayner is the Green Lantern. He's not temporary. He's not necessarily going away tomorrow. He's not just someone who's going to be replaced with the guy who used to have the job. And this is why, because when he's thrown into all of these varied situations, he adapts, he goes on to the next thing. He's an artist. He's able to assume this stuff. And I love that he's the first person to arrive on Wonder World, which is like the apex world of superheroes, because he has the biggest imagination. I just thought that was a really good way of developing the character. I always tell people Kyle's my favorite Green Lantern, and most of that comes from the Morrison run. Not that I'm against Ron Mars's run on the character, but
Ron Mars is a Mets fan, so you can be.
Oh well, then forget that guy. I don't want anything to do with him. But great stuff.
That Grant Morrison is astonishingly good at, while showing us these fucking like larger than life myths, doing like larger than life myth stuff where like Green Lantern like makes the freaking toy with the toy squirt head like you used to get. There was a Jason like that back in the day. The Mad Balls had him, and it sucks up all the water and then like takes it away and everything. That in a world where like that's happening and like Superman reads a CD player and blows up but doesn't, and that kind of thing. Grant does a great job of never letting you forget, usually via characters, in this case, Green Arrow and Aztec, that this shit is big. Like, this is not stuff that is, like, normal. Even in, like, the superhero world, like, Green Arrow is like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Everything is over my head. I'm a guy with a bow. I'm doing my best. But also getting the most important thing over about the Justice League to me, because there's foreshadowing about Green Arrow. It's like, what can a guy with a bow even do against all these gods and stuff? What can I even do? And it's great foreshadowing in regard to that. But it also, just reinforces what I think Grant Morrison gets about the Justice League, which I naively think is the most important thing about the Justice League, and that is that it shows that there's something for everyone to do. And that is like, listen, Superman can watch the atoms on the sun split, and he can fly from like here to Pluto and back and like bring you back this, very rare flower, but they've got to hit a target. They're only going to get one chance at it. That's where Green Arrow comes. All Green Arrow can do is hit this target. It's all he can do. I mean, and you see this later on, you get like Plastic Man. What can he do? He's the stretchy guy. All Batman is the best human that there's ever been. And, at some point, though, we will need just somebody. Superman and Martian Manhunter can't save the day. We need the guy with the most willpower and the strongest weapon in the universe, somebody who believes in themselves like that. We'll need somebody who can just be a little faster. As fast as Superman is, we'll need someone who's just a little faster. And I tell everybody this to quote, I think it was Daniel Berrigan, who worked with a Catholic group of people who protested the Vietnam War. He was like, one cannot level one's moral lance against every evil in the universe. There's too much evil and the universe is too large. One will get worn out very quickly. But everyone can do something. And the difference between doing something and doing nothing is everything. And the Justice League reminds us of that. And that's why Connor, and that's why it's so important to have Green Arrow there. And that's why it's so important to have that guy who's like, I'm not sure if I belong here. Buddy, we all belong.
Yeah.
Buddy, we've all got something to add. The sooner we all add it, the better off this place is going to be. So string your bow, Connor. We're going to need you.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in these issues, Dean reminded me, where after the Revenge Squad is defeated, Connor basically complains about what he calls this stupid, pointless.
What a waste of time.
Yeah.
I'm crying over here, guys. I'm a dork. But he's right. Like, what the hell? What the hell is this?
Yeah. And then Batman turns to the others and he goes, well, does it remind you of anyone? And Superman goes, well, he's Ollie's boy, you know.
He's Ollie's son.
I like that a lot because I'm a big Hawkeye fan, and people are always like, why does a team with Thor and Iron Man need a guy with arrows? And in Age of Ultron, Linda Cardinale's character asks Hawkeye, like, you know, why do you think you're on this team? And he goes, well, they don't need me. And she goes, no, I absolutely think they do. And, you know, it's the same thing with Green Arrow. It's like, well, why do you need a guy who is really good at shooting bow and arrows, always going to hit a target? Well, it's to remind you that real people live in the world and they have to get up for work the next day after you've defeated your hard light hologram duplicate that has absolutely nothing to do with them. And that's why Connor works so well in this story. And that's why Connor appears to be able to be perverted by Cersei, because he's not wrong. He had nothing to do with this fight. And suddenly he's watching as people's lives are trampled on for something that has nothing to do with them. And then Cersei's like, yeah, why is your dad not here? And they're like, and he's like, oh, yeah, you know, that might have to do something with Superman. Obviously, you know, he saves the day because he's a superhero. That's what he does. But Morrison's able to sell to the reader where it's like, no, I think I can be consistent with the way this character has been characterized and be consistent with how you expect Green Arrow to act on the Justice League, and you know, make you wonder, you know, is this going to be a guy who has a heel turn? And,
although we know Batman spills the beans a little before we see the big reveal. We're like, how many we got up there? 3 in a very Pulp Fiction moment. Like, how many?
Yeah.
How many are of ours in there? But I honestly think you're right on some level that, like, the reason Green Arrow's there is they don't need him, but I think they do because, like, part of hitting a target, like I said, Superman theoretically can do anything, but part of hitting a target isn't having the best scope. Part of hitting a target isn't necessarily having the best gun or the best way to do it. Part of it is the mindset. And let's be honest, I love Superman, but not very great at clearing his mind most of the time. And if you've only got one shot, you need the sniper. And I'll take Green Arrow over Superman any day of the week. And I think everyone in the JLA also would. Superman himself would be like, this isn't my job.
Awesome.
All right, let's go ahead. We'll get into parts 3 and 4 of Rock of Ages. As Aquaman and the Flash head off with Metron, Green Lantern follows Metron as well and becomes lost. Darry kind of mentioned this. He's still looking for the Philosopher's Stone. He's also trying to find his friends now. Green Lantern finds himself in a place
stuck
called...
in the forest from the never-ending story.
Right. He finds himself in a place called Wonder World and gets a tour of its museum from a being called Moat. Green Lantern is able to find his friends and explains that during his journey there, he was told by Our Man that trying to find the Philosopher's Stone is a wild goose chase. The trio asks some other heroes of that realm, these large beings. You actually see them on the front of part 3 of this. I should say you see their feet.
They're titans to gods. I wonder if that's kind of the allegory we're supposed to get, like the Titans versus the Greek gods, because the Titans were like much
massive
bigger than they were. Yeah,
right.
I can't say for sure. Me and Grant don't talk as much as we used to. We talk the exact same amount as in we don't.
So the trio asks some other heroes of that realm to send them home back to their own time. The heroes of Wonderworld say they can, but advise them it comes with a risk. The trio will not have full control of where they're going. Understanding they need to get back to where they belong, the heroes head backward in time. Once they complete their journey, they are horrified to see that their world no longer appears as it did. Darkseid has somehow taken over the Earth. Learning they have arrived back home, but 15 years in the future.
The idea is that Wonderworld doesn't exist in normal space. To be there, you have to, it's like being on the astral plane or going to heaven. You kind of exist in a more...
Or even New Genesis and Apocalypse. Like, you can only get there from a boom tube. They don't exist like...
This because they're in the Marvel universe.
What?
You guys don't know this? So
I have heard this theory.
Okay. I don't think this is... I have never met a member of the Kirby family. I don't think this is a theory. I think this is what Jack actually intended. If you look at the panels when Kirby is describing how New Genesis and Apocalypse are formed.
Oh yeah, with you see Thor and those guys dead. Yeah, for sure. When I say theory, I just mean nobody's ever come out. Jack Kirby never came out and said it.
Oh no, because then Goodman would have been like, "Well, I own all of this too." And
I try not to be the guy who's like, too much. I can say stuff like earlier with the PTSD, like he wouldn't have said that, but in hindsight, he wouldn't have had the language. We can see that's probably what was happening. happening. But like with this stuff, there's just too much Who Shot John with the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby people. But it does seem likely. Don't get me wrong. It seems pretty likely.
What is
and if I could come across them, like if Mark Evanier said it was true, I'd believe it.
You know Tell me what it is.
Jesse, the idea is that when Kirby left Marvel to go to DC...
Don't tell him.
No, screw you, Dean.
To create the fourth...
Listen, Kirby would want to scheme it to see. It's like fourth world shit.
The idea is that Kirby was... He was trying to say that New Genesis and Apocalypse came from one world. That one world is Asgard. So the idea is that though there were more Thor stories after Kirby left Marvel, as far as Kirby was concerned, Ragnarok came, the Golden Realm was ripped asunder, and then over time, what had been Asgard, what had been the Nine Realms, became coalesced into two different opposite worlds of Apocalypse and New Genesis. So the reason that New Gods in the original 70s Fourth World stories needed boom tubes to get to Earth, and why they didn't just use spaceships like every other alien, is because they were coming from Earth 616 to Earth 1. Now, this has never been spelled out on the page. This is just, I have read enough articles of people who were around him. If you look at the backgrounds, you see Thor. Thor as a concept is in the public domain.
Right.
None of this is... none of this is spelled...
and they're in their Marvel regalia and they're dead.
Yeah, it's a graveyard. Wow. This is all ignored later on. Boom tubes become just a generic form of teleportation of New Genesis and Apocalypse being just so far away from Earth, closer to the source wall, that they're just so far away that you need teleportation. You would never get on a ship. But I do believe that the original intent was that they were in Marvel, and you needed a boom tube to get to DC because that's where the anti-life equation was.
That's crazy.
And I think Wonderworld operates on a similar concept where it's a more conceptual realm. Adam 1 says he's been fighting the darkness for 1 million years before he even got here. So to be sent home, you're raw information. You're just light. You're just energy. You're just, for lack of a better term, your soul. And when they land on Earth, they have to find the most similar forms because the forms they were expecting don't exist anymore. So Aquaman finds himself because 15 years to a guy who can survive on ocean floor is not a big deal. And Wally's the same. Kyle's dead, so he finds someone else. But, that's how I read it. And that's why there's a timer. That's why there's so much urgency to travel back in time, because they all keep talking about how they can feel themselves becoming more physical. And the idea is that once they've substantiated to normal human form, they're going to be stuck in this alternate reality.
And they can't change it once they're stuck. And
they can't change it. And then that's it. The waveform has settled. Darkseid has taken everything over, but and then Orion destroys everything anyway. So
if I could find a place where Mark Evanier said that was for sure the Marvel Universe. Now, I've definitely seen him say that it was Thor in them, but not that it was the Marvel Universe. But you're right; they did Ragnarok not far before Kirby left, so within a year or two. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not shitting on it. I would if he says it, then I think it's true. That's the only guy whose word I would take, other than Kirby's. He's like, oh yeah, for sure. And I may have not found it because that guy's written so much shit in so many places and done so many panels. He could have done a panel at the fucking Akron Comic Convention 2002, big guest, and admitted this, and I just ain't come across it. So I'm not shitting on it but I have heard it. I would like to hear it straight from that guy or something. But like, what an idea, what a concept. That's the kind of shit Kirby would pull, and it just kind of shows you that very few people get the New Gods going forward after Kirby, and Grant Morrison may have been the person who got it the closest. Maybe, I don't. If there's somebody who did better, I'd like to know who they were.
Yeah, Morrison was the only one who understood the fundamental concept of the New Gods, that they weren't just alien conquerors. They're, as you said, they're concepts. The idea being that they are a new Greek pantheon for the modern era. That's why Black Racer is on skis, and
that's why the Forever people are hippies.
Yeah, that's why they're hippies, because he lived in California, lived in Southern California in the late 60s. Kirby was looking out his window and being like, this is your world now. I'm an old guy. I've been through nonsense, and I've raised 4 kids. Like, this is your world. What are the gods you're going to come up with?
Exactly. Much like Zeus looked like the ancient Greek people.
Yeah.
If we were telling these myths again, the folklore again, why would they not be on a big goddamn super cycle?
Yeah.
Why would that not look like that? And even now, as we continue to create myths, they look different than when Kirby was creating them. Although for my money, nobody will ever do better. You know what I mean? But I'm an old man. But hey, sorry, you put a big guy on a super cycle and they're driving around, and I'm just in.
You hit the nail on the head. You really did. It's folklore. The new gods are folklore. They're not traditional superheroes. And if you can understand that distinction, you can tell incredible stories with them. Morrison's
and it doesn't mean you can't use them as superheroes sometimes, but when it's their story, it's got to be a lot different.
Yeah. Orion isn't just a very strong warrior. Orion is the god of war. What does that mean to him when he's in battle, what he has to do?
And of course, you tie that into the pact. What does this mean, nature versus nurture? Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it means everything. We'll find out.
Jack Kirby worked on comics from 1939 to 1994. He never did a better comic book than The Pact. So this monster is damn close, but The Pact is beautiful. It is a gorgeous piece of fiction, and every superhero comic fan should be required to read it.
It's biblical in every possible way.
It's lovely. Yeah, it's lovely. It really is. It's a beautiful piece of
as he himself said, an epic for our time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're off topic. Jesse, I don't even remember what you asked me.
No, we're talking about hard light bodies. not hard bodies, but hard light bodies. He kind of explained to me, okay, so they came back. That's why I was sitting there going, like, why would Green Lantern turn into a swarm trooper? Why is he serving Darkseid?
When they're taking off on the treadmill, Flash is like, our essence is going to be changed into like a mathematical equation. And these are the equations that worked the best when they showed up.
It's like when you try to install a app on your phone and you got to make sure the software on the phone matches the app. That's how I read it. Like, Kyle's looking for a mind that would take his form, and his form is like, well, I have a Green Lantern ring. So it's like, well, this swarm trooper has this weird gun that seems to be pretty powerful. And if we can jam
and a cyborg guy.
Yeah, if we can jam the anti-life equation for half a second and get you in there, the body is close enough to what you expect. So, you'll figure it out. But it's also another reflection of the world they find themselves in. This post-apocalyptic world that they land in is supposed to be miserable, right? Like, Kyle's not going to land in his slightly older, more debonair self. Like, he has to find himself in a terrible body. One thing that's not mentioned here that I really like is elsewhere in the Grant Morrison run, I believe it's Aztec's Initiation, they give him a questionnaire. And one of the questions is, if you find yourself in a post-apocalyptic version of reality, what are you going to do? And the answer is, well, I'm going to look for surviving superheroes, and we're going to form an underground resistance, and we're going to do our best to fix everything as best we can. And the Martian Manhunter goes, good, that was the right answer. And then he moves on with his life. And then here you see that's exactly what they do, because at this point it's a cliche, right? Like you find yourself in a dystopian future, you're going to look around for who survives, and you're going to see if you can prevent the thing. And I like that Morrison says, listen, you know how this is going to run, but you don't know necessarily how it's going to end. And I'm going to show you that some of your friends had to make pretty bad compromises. So, stick around. Buy the next issue.
So Green Lantern is a swarm trooper. Aquaman, like I said, found his own body and Wally West did as well. Wally West, though, things have changed for that man. He says he can't feel a connection to the Speed Force anymore.
That dude can't never run in an alternate future.
Right, dude.
Like, remember when we were doing the Super 7 and he lost it? He don't ever get to run when it's an alternate future.
Aquaman also runs into Wonder Woman, which I didn't bring her up, but I mean, in the current incarnation of the JLA, she's dead, correct?
Dead.
Yeah. He runs into Wonder Woman and he's like, what in the world? What are you doing here?
I think it's Hippolyta, because I think while Wonder Woman was dead, like, Hippolyta came in and was Wonder Woman for a little bit.
Oh, okay. So
her mom,
Her mom, Wonder Woman's mom.
Okay, so this is Wonder Woman's mom that we're seeing.
I believe
here.
So.
No. Okay. This is Diana. But to Tina's point, I think the next arc in current time would say, well, we really need a Wonder Woman. Can we just use her mother? And then there was some time travel shenanigans to explain why she was also the Wonder Woman of the 40s.
Because I think it's what John Byrne was doing in Wonder Woman itself. Like, I'm sorry, I thought this was Hippolyta for that reason, but I was wrong.
Oh, you might be right. That's not how I read it, just because Arthur is constantly like, Wonder Woman. I took it as like, hey, we want to use the big seven. But Morrison also doesn't have the character like look at the reader and say, I am Diana Prince, or I am Hippolyta, or I am.
Can't remember if he called her princess, I think, so that would lead me to believe it was Diana.
I assumed it was Diana, but either way, I mean,
but listen, I thought because she was dead, because they were saying she was dead. Anyhow, you're right. Listen, the important thing is we have a Wonder Woman, whether it's Diana, Hippolyta, Artemis, maybe even the Fury. Here's Wonder Woman.
Yes,
a Wonder Woman who is in peak form, because when she's fighting the god of control, she's the only person who's like, oh yes, fighting a god, good. I was trained to do that. This does not intimidate me whatsoever. Give me my bunch of weapons and give me, good allies, and I will fight you. And I love that. I think, Wonder Woman is the ultimate representation of the old gods. She's nobility. She's the pursuit of peace. She's generosity. She's all these great things, but she's also the greatest warrior that's ever lived. If the new gods are going to invade Earth and they have to defeat the old gods, they're going to send Wonder Woman as their avatar. I mean, I could watch Wonder Woman fight the hordes of Apocalypse all day. Like, please make that a monthly book.
I like the way she treats Batman, because like Batman will be trying to do something sneaky and Superman will be like, well, I guess. And Wonder Woman will be like, he's got a bomb behind his back, you fucking idiot. I have to love Wonder Woman because she doesn't put up like you cannot get that kind of thing over on her, where like she's very good natured, but you can get over a little bit on Superman. Like he wants to take you at like the ultimate good faith. She's like, no, you don't understand. I am part of a government. Like I am, I understand. I love to take everyone on good faith, but once you show me who you are, I remember, and I love you, Batman, but you have a bat bomb behind your back, and we're not playing that. And that's the thing. Like everybody's like, oh, Batman, he's got that kryptonite. He could kick Superman's ass with that. Hey, maybe so, but he's not going to kick Wonder Woman's ass. So whatever happens next, if he kills Superman, I don't know what he's going to do against the princess.
Right. The group gather in Detroit. They find Connor, who's clearly older now, and they also find Azteca, which is the successor to Aztec. So they gather all of the heroes together. They discover that the turning point that led them to this future is when they destroyed Amazo. Yeah, that's right. Amazo's there. The turning point is when the Philosopher Stone had been destroyed in the past. Soon after that, the gods came and obliterated. It just took over. Looking to get back to the point in which they left, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and the Flash look to invade Darkseid's headquarters in Vegas to get some tech they can use to send themselves back in time. Instead of finding Darkseid there, they're able to find the future Batman, who joins their forces. A loud boom is heard, and Darkseid arrives on the Earth. We also learned that Martian Manhunter back in the past, Martian Manhunter and Superman survived the explosion and are headed back to the Watchtower, while Green Arrow was apparently wooed by Cersei and arrives at Injustice Gang headquarters looking to help shut down the JLA. Lex puts his plan into action and contacts Aztec, telling him that he plans to destroy the current incarnation of the JLA and that Aztec must be the leader of the new JLA that rises from the ashes, funded by LexCorp. However, Aztec resists. Little does Lex know, though, that Bruce Wayne is working with the Mirror Master and paying him to undermine Luthor as well. So all sorts of stuff is just going on here to try and who's going to get the upper hand between Lex Luthor and the JLA? Who knows? But we know that there are some pawns, I'm going to say some people in place to kind of make sure that this goes down. So that is parts 3 and 4 of Rock of Ages. Dean, we'll start with you, man. Do you have any notes?
I think one of the coolest things is when like they gather all the heroes that are left, and you've got the fucking reprogrammed Amazo, gold star for Robot Boy, as as we would say. And you see this table behind them of what is apparently the remnants of like some superheroes, like Superman's like tunic is there, Starman's gravity rod is there, Steel's sledgehammer, Robin's tunic. Dr. Fate apparently got shot in the head, just straight up shot. The helmet of Naboo,
man,
just a bullet hole in it. I don't see how that could happen, but whatever. I don't know. Jared Stevens was probably fucking around. That's probably what happened. So there's a bunch of stuff over there, and if you look really closely, you can see the knife from the guy at Madison Square Garden at the Carnage concert. He went down fighting, and they kept that knife with him. You look way in the back. There it is, to honor his sacrifice. Even though he was a bad guy, he knew that he was not going to go down to Darkseid, and you got to respect that. You got to heavy metal to the bone. Y'all are heavy metal fans. Y'all do the same thing, and they remember him with that knife. So,
well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
I really like Wonderworld. I mean, obviously, you know, big concept. I love the moat. What a moment when he was like, listen, he's like, you know, Green Lantern's like, you seem normal size. What do you mean you shrink? He's like, things are bigger here. And like, you look up and here's these like huge fucking guys. Amazing also how the JLA retains their sense of self in Wonderworld, where like they're willing to tell off these like space gods.
Right.
Now, leave me alone. We got a plan to do of our own. Really showing their integrity, their dedication to their own mission, and they're just, you know, confidence in themselves. Really cool to see Hourman here. I think this is his first appearance. I'm an Hourman mark of all Hourmans, like the old school Hourman from the Golden Age, the Infinity Incorporated Hourman, and this Hourman. I always love the concept. I mean, you know, guy takes a pill and then he got superpowers. I take pills, I can get no superpowers. Let's do that. So I really like seeing those things. Obviously, like you said, that moment, you know, the Carnage guy notwithstanding, the moment where you see that, you're like, wow, they're playing for super keeps. Also, really cool that Argent was there. Like, you know, because, you know, I mean, I don't want to say this poorly. Argent was in, I think, the Dan Jurgens Teen Titans.
Yeah.
But like Argent's kind of a nobody, like in the grand scale of the DC universe. And I always like it when like there's a scrappy superheroes where like everybody's there. You're like, oh, here's 4 guys we know, and Solo, the When I Live Terrorized, all right. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it seems like some of those guys would have an easier time surviving because they have, you know, like who knows about Wild Dog or who's looking for Captain Ultra. On the other hand, if you're Thor or you're like, you know, Black Canary, you know, people are coming after you. You know, they know who you are. You're Starman. You know, so I think so. I like seeing somebody, you know, a little from the B team, and I don't want to shit on that. If you like Argent or you like those Teen Titans, well,
Lab Man, and Image versus.
Yes, Lab Man. The less said, the better. No, I'm just kidding. No, really, no, for real, like a good, a good example of that. There's also this great sense of awe and wonder in these 2 issues, both in Wonderworld, which is like positive, and like the opposite when they get back to the future and Apocalypse has changed all of Europe into a goddamn fire pit. You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, oh shit, like this is terrible. You get awesome in both senses of the word. Like awesome can be pejorative, and it's you really see that here. Howard Porter just is, you know, nailing it left and right and making, you know, seem, you know, larger than life.
You guys know I'm a fan of time travel, so I'm all about that element in this story. Loved it. I love the fact that, to kind of support what you're saying, the Wonderworld thing, that crazy concept, them showing up there, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get back? And they're like, oh yeah, well, we can send you back, but you better be careful. And of course they screw it up. But yeah.
Well, but they didn't really. The thing is, it's like Metron had put in the whammy on them, and they were using those like baby boxes to like, oh, it's like a compass type thing. And I think it took them to where Metron was in the future.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Is that how you understood it, Darry?
The mother boxes are programmed to like speak to each other like a network. Yeah, I kind of assume that if one was programmed to send you to the wrong place, the other ones might get you back to the beginning, or they may not. So,
but since they locked in on him, he wasn't sticking around. You know, like he wasn't still where they were. He had gone back to, you know, evil Metron had gone back to do evil Metron things, which really are similar to just Metron things, honestly.
You know, I was going to say one of the things that I always get surprised about in this book, and again, I don't know how much of it was just like, hey, Genesis is a thing that's going to happen no matter what. If you read the original Fourth World books from the 70s, Kirby goes out of his way to make sure that you know that Metron is not from New Genesis nor Apocalypse. And the idea was that there are things in the Fourth World that are bigger than these binary concepts, which are in many ways restricted by the fact that they are constantly fighting each other, or were until the Pact. And that was actually one of the things that inspired Jim Starlin. Jim Starlin very famously based Thanos not on Darkseid, but on Metron, which is why, Jesse, to your point, both Thanos and Metron have the same little eyebrow things. On Thanos, it's on his helmet. But that's where they come from. Thanos even has the same Mobius chair in a lot of the Starlin stories.
Right.
So yeah, the idea of there being a good Metron and a bad Metron is kind of like, yeah, Metron's, if you could picture the Dungeons and Dragons 9 chart, Metron's dead center. He doesn't care about
true
you.
Neutral.
He's true neutral. He literally does not care whether you're a good person or a bad person. He only cares, do you know a fact he has not yet learned? Because he can go anywhere, he can do anything. He shares a lot of stuff with Doctor Who, except instead of getting, random teenagers stuck in terrible situations that's almost certainly going to kill them, he wants to know what's going to happen, next season or whatever.
Right.
I mean, and when it comes to it, like, people will be like, well, but he usually is fighting on the side of New Genesis. Well, yeah, he's neutral, but homeboy Darkseid wants to destroy everything. That's not good for Metron.
Yeah, Metron's going to have an issue with
Dungeons and Dragons, which is the example you used, mostly the true neutral people, when it comes to the big cosmic fights, as a general rule, they tend to side with good unless good has created an unholy empire, like they've become so do good that, like, they're actually autocratic and terrible and persecutive now. But, if it's like, okay, well, these guys are going to end all of existence and these guys don't want them to. And turns out I exist. I guess I'm on the side of the people who want to stop them.
There's one of my favorite lines in this comic is when they say that which disagrees with the will of Darkseid is impossible and must not exist, and that which agrees with the will of Darkseid is superfluous. And to Dean's point, I think that describes Metron, because if Metron wakes up and everything in the universe is exactly what Darkseid wants, he has nothing new to learn and he has nothing new to discover because everything has been sent by the wayside. But if Highfather is in charge, Highfather is not exactly a noble, beneficial God. He is just saying, well, I'm not interested in control. I want the universe to be its crazy, chaotic self. And I'm safe here in Supertown with Light Ray and the Bug and everyone else. But Highfather does not watch over the rest of the universe and make sure everyone's okay. For the most part, he doesn't really care what the hell's going on. So it's really this idea more of chaos and order. Darkseid wants absolute control. Highfather is like, no, life should be allowed to do whatever life is going to do. And then, we'll deal with it accordingly, which is usually why Metron spends more time on New Genesis. Because if someone's going to be like, you have to do exactly what I tell you and nothing else, and someone else is going to say, no, c'est la vie, you're probably going to be like, all right, I'm going to hang around here and see what the hell happens. But, at the same time, if I go back to like the DCAU, Metron is the one who allows Darkseid to actually get the anti-life equation because, it's the only thing left to have. So Metron is your definite wild card. And I think that's why he's so good here, because even when he shows up at the Watchtower, everyone's like, that's Metron, right? And they're all kind of looking at each other like, yes, we're not sure. We don't know. Every time we met him, something crazy and messed up happens. The computers are saying it's him, but it's a god, so who knows? And I like that Morrison uses that incongruity to further the story, because the characters don't know any more than you do. And I always like that about it.
Yeah, the ones who would know aren't there.
Yeah, exactly. Orion and Barda and Mr. Miracle.
Batman's not there. He's met Metron,
Yeah.
Green Lantern has not, Flash, I don't think he has either, and Aquaman might have once. During Panic in the Sky, probably.
Yeah. The other thing, the last thing I'll bring up here, well, usually when I'm doing the show with Chris and Evan, when we're talking comics, we will pick a panel from every issue that we're discussing. And I think the panel for sure of these two issues is the one that you shared earlier today, Dean, which is Darkseid Is.
Darkseid Is.
Yeah. That is a panel and a half right there. Him just arriving, walking out, and declaring.
Being announced by Glorious Godfrey, I believe, his propaganda agent, which is pretty cool in of itself. Now, I love, Glorious Godfrey, I don't think Legends was a good crossover, but I think Glorious Godfrey was a good character. It was a good idea. It just doesn't quite come together. Darkseid's a scared little baby. He needs a guy to go in front of him, tell everybody how great he is before he shows up. Darkseid can't ask a girl to prom. Darkseid Darkseid as his friend do it.
I can see it.
He writes a note and he's like, "Do you like me? Yes, no,
Or-
Omega sign."
Neither of you guys have mentioned what I think is the best part of these two issues, which is the reveal that there is no Darkseid, there is only Batman.
Yes. Yes.
He pulls down the hood, and
Well, I gotta leave something for you, you know.
Darkseid, famously named after the Marquis de Sade. It's where we get the word sadist and sadism from. Darkseid is bad, and he's a god who enjoys being bad, who enjoys inflicting pain on other people just to see what's going on.
He's more despicable than Darkseid in most ways, because like you're saying, like, it's one thing to like hit somebody as hard as you can. It's another thing to like use a not cat of nine tails flail on them, which will like rip off the flesh. Like he likes torturing people, which that's reprehensible. It's worse than Darkseid somehow.
I agree, and in many stories, the worst thing that Darkseid can do isn't put you under his spell, so to speak. It's give you to Darkseid. Like that's what he does to people who really annoy him, because he knows Darkseid is going to make you feel pain just to see what happens. Darkseid
and even Darkseid is like, you're a piece of shit, Darkseid.
Yeah, exactly. Darkseid doesn't respect Darkseid or anything like that. Darkseid is always talking about how he worships Darkseid. He's just doing this to see what will happen. It's not even necessarily a torture thing. I mean, yeah, sometimes they'll get information out of this, but mostly it's just like, no, I want to see what pain feels like for you. So the idea that, it takes 8 years, but eventually the Batman, the goddamn Batman, is able to overcome the god of malice, the god of torture, and assume his role because of the slim chance that his old friends were going to show up and need him to be in this position is just a thing of beauty. I know I keep bringing it up a lot, but this is expanded on in Final Crisis, where you see the idea that Batman is experimented on by other characters who perform a similar role to Darkseid, and they can't break the Batman. They're trying to, and they fail. And ultimately, his willpower alone is enough for him to free himself and eventually face Darkseid one-on-one.
Why don't they just show him the Mark of Zorro over and over again?
Good reference.
That's evil.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying nobody tries that. Like, listen, I'm on Batman's side here, but like all they ever do is like punch him and tell him he's stupid and like kick him in the butt or what the fuck ever. Listen, the only thing he's ever done is whine and cry about his mommy and daddy who got shot in front of him. I get it. So you should go to that. You're wasting your time otherwise.
I agree. The other thing I really like about these
give him popcorn and drinks too. Make him real comfortable.
Oh,
it's funny. I actually did watch something recently that does do that. I don't know if you guys watched the Harley Quinn show on HBO Max.
I've seen the first 2 seasons, but I think they just dropped the third one. I haven't watched it yet.
I love it. I can't recommend it highly enough, but there is an episode in the most recent season where they do just that, where someone is going through Batman's psyche and they basically trapped him as a child. And he's just constantly reliving that night of leaving the movie theater and confronting it. And it's dark and it's messed up. And, Harley Quinn, having been a psychiatrist in her previous life, is actually able to help him. So it's a really great episode. It's very funny. It's incredibly dark, but it is exactly what Dean's describing. So
that cartoon also has a Darkseid Is joke. So I like that. Yeah. I won't get into details, but Darkseid gets involved at one point. It's just a wild cartoon. And like somebody says that not in the way that it would be taken, but if you know what it is, you know what it is.
Oh, that's great.
The other thing I love about this is Ray Palmer, the Atom, shows up in the future. He is amazing. And he's not a character that I particularly have any fondness for. But again, it's one of these things where Morrison is just like, I want to use the Atom. I think he would have survived. He's both a scientist and an adventurer. He'd probably make it through all this nonsense, and he's going to lead the others. And I think Morrison does a great job with him. Morrison clearly has some sort of affectation for these size-changing characters. Dean mentioned the Moat, who's basically the god of Atom-like size-changing characters from Wonderworld. And even in the DC 1 Million crossover, the Atom of 1 Million is a very interesting character. He's a single entity that can break into hundreds of thousands of individual characters, and the story he's introduced in is incredible.
Is he a hologram?
He is not, but he acts in the way a hologram is. Right. Again, you gotta tie everything back to that theme.
Exactly. I think the Atom belongs here again and belongs in the JLA because again he's one of those myths, the myth of the size changer, the guy who is both normal size and small. That's something that we see in a lot of different pantheons and folklore. It's great to see him here, like you said. Also, I like what he said too, where he's like, "Yeah, listen, I'm a scientist, but science lost. These fucking fundamentalist weirdos won't." Which again is kind of scary in modern times, what we're seeing out there. And I also forgot to mention this on the table where you can see the knife and stuff with the with Robin. Mr. Miracle's tunic is there as well, and that made me very sad when I saw it.
That means.
And honestly, I think that's the only bad call Grant Morrison makes. Tell me what he didn't escape.
That could have been Howard Porter. You don't know what the script
or Shiloh Norman.
Oh yeah, sure.
Artist. It could have been Shiloh Norman's stuff, but you meant the artist. Yeah, he could have just drawn some stuff in there. But I am just saying that's a miss. If that's Scott Free, I don't buy it. Scott Free's running around probably making fun of Orion.
Can we just talk about real quick how fucked up those devices are that are strapped onto the faces and heads of people that Darkseid has? I don't know. Is this what's being beamed down? Like there's an anti-life generator or something coming from the moon or something? I can't remember.
Yeah,
anyway,
and I think those things are clamped over people's eyes and ears, so they can't feel anything. Right. They look like cybernetic Nightbreed.
Ugh.
Have you ever seen Clive Barker's Nightbreed?
No, I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah,
that's terrifying. That is terrifying. I mean, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put this on your face. It's just a series of hands. That's messed up. Anyway, it's a scary looking depiction there.
We should cosplay that. See who gets it. Just walk around and be like, "What the fuck are you?" And just all you say is "Darkseid is." That's all you.
Darkseid is. That's
Darkseid is.
I just love any plot point that's like you have to stop the Justice League from winning, because you know when you open up the first issue, the Justice League is going to find a way to overcome the Injustice Gang. You know that. You've read a Justice League story before, or you're familiar with the genre. But I love that the gods are all like, no, you have to stop him from winning, from destroying the MacGuffin. You have to stop that. And the answer is like, why? Well, because if you do that, something worse is going to come in, like a predator filling an ecological niche. So I really like that, because that plays against type, and that's something that they're not sure that they should do in the first place. And it's not until you see this, absolutely terrible world full of fire pits that everything has become 15 years later that you really see that. And again, I thought that was a really good way of keeping the momentum going. One of the reasons we're still talking about Rock of Ages 25 years later is because every issue is packed with stuff. I mean, you have the Injustice Gang, you have Wonderworld, you have Darkseid, you have the Anti-Life Equation, you have all of this other stuff that keeps coming, and you never get a chance to breathe. You really do have to read it a couple of times to process it all, but you also get your money's worth. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years on comic books. Most of them I didn't read more than once. This thing I read once a year just because I really enjoy it. So again, you don't buy a Grant Morrison comic and not get what you paid for, I think.
Very well said. All right. Parts 5 and 6. Here we go. Still 15 years in the future, heroes Azteca and Argent are looking to dismantle the anti-life broadcast array in an attempt to break Darkseid's hold over humanity. At the cost of their own lives, they are able to destroy it. The rest of the team, Aquaman, Batman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Flash, and rest of them, head to find Metron. And
the others.
I had to find Metron and Darkseid and engage them in battle. Wonder Woman tries to hold her own against Darkseid, and Granny Goodness. Who wants to talk about Granny Goodness and just tell me what Granny Goodness is?
Well, Granny Goodness is terrible. Granny Goodness is the antithesis of everything her name would make you think that she is. She runs an atrocious and autocratic orphanage for special students on Apocalypse that will eventually graduate to be like elite soldiers for Darkseid. Most notable the female Furies, Lashina, Stompa, and the others. And of course, Scott Free, Mr. Miracle, was one of her students, but he refused to accept anything that she did. It did not matter what he was thrown up against; he would escape every time, including the notorious X-Pit. And he took Big Barda with him. and they left because they could not be contained because somehow he was always going to be Highfather's son. It didn't matter. Orion was going to turn good due to nurture, and Scott Free couldn't be turned bad due to nature. And
Nice.
that is saying something. But that's Granny Goodness. She is the epitome of the narcissistic, terrible, abusive parent.
Well,
The less said about her, the better, because she's a piece of shit. Now, she's a great character, though. Honestly, brilliant look. Everything about it is like scary.
Yeah.
Kirby do horror more than you would think. This is frightening.
yeah. I mean, it's just this basic floating box mechanism that's out there.
Well, that's grandmother box. The old Granny Goodness looks like an old lady.
Oh, okay.
Like
Okay,
this
gotcha.
is like I think she like I can't remember what it was, but she basically destroyed the mother boxes and turned them into one big grandmother box, because the mother
Okay.
boxes are cool, neat. I assume they're very like cool Commodore 64s that you can like strap to you. It just does everything. It'll heal you, tell you all this information. You can play Oregon Trail on it if you want. Like but it's just very nice and very like, hey, how are you doing today? The grandmother box is Granny Goodness in a thing that looks like a Borg ship.
Yeah, right. Well, regardless, it looks like Wonder Woman ends up sacrificing herself, destroying the grandmother box. And she's also, she was also trying to hold her own against Darkseid, but she ends up getting killed.
Well, it's like the Final Fantasy game. You got to kill the underling before you can kill the big boss. Because if you just go after the big boss, they'll keep hitting you. So, listen, if she didn't kill the big boss, she didn't. But goddamn, she took out that Borg-looking ship. And good riddance. And I feel like in a weird way, only somebody like Wonder Woman, could beat somebody like Granny Goodness, because I feel like they're supposed to be like the opposite parts of like female duality. Here's, the good mother, and here's the evil crone, or what the fuck ever, how you would put it. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to sound like a bad
No, it totally makes sense.
Right, cool.
So elsewhere, Batman is able to goad Metron into becoming human for a split second and immediately hits him with a hypnotic gas. Armed with the power of suggestion, Batman
Now, he
has
knocks the shit out of him first up.
He hits him pretty good. He does smack him right in the face.
Right in the face. That's great.
Armed with the power of suggestion, Batman has Metron send Aquaman, Green Lantern, and the Flash 15 years prior to their original time. The Atom and Green Arrow, though, have to face off with Darkseid. Knowing they may be outmatched, the pair realize that Darkseid has an impenetrable force field save for one weakness. Knowing that Darkseid can see, the Atom reasons that light can get through the shield. Green Arrow launches the Atom at Darkseid. Atom shrinks down and enters Darkseid's, I assume his eye, making his way into Darkseid's brain and killing him. Meanwhile, Orion looks to use a device called a Genesis box to unmake and remake the universe without Darkseid in it.
Don't fuck with the dog of war.
At the end of part 5, we race 15 years in the past to see Superman has the Philosopher Stone and is about to destroy it in front of Lex Luthor. We're coming back to this issue here in just a second. Let's finish this out, though. In the present, Superman, Batman, and Martian Manhunter look to disable the Injustice Gang headquarters. The JLA has the upper hand as Plastic Man has been masquerading as the Joker on the bridge. When Ocean Master finds the real Joker tied up, Green Arrow also turns on Lex Luthor. And as if things could not get worse for Luthor, a large asteroid appears to be heading for Injustice Gang headquarters, and Superman, Batman, and Martian Manhunter show up. Not only that, Mirror Master makes it known he is now working alongside Batman. Lex activates the Doppelganger JLA Revenge Squad, while Dr. Light begins to power up, turning Superman into radio waves, FM radio waves, and ejecting him out into space. Martian Manhunter wakes Lex's semi-conscious telepathic alien, who also joins in the fight against Luthor. And then making his way back to the Injustice Gang headquarters, Superman takes the Philosopher's Stone and is about to destroy it when Martian Manhunter quickly puts his hands in front, blocking Superman's heat vision. I believe that's what he's trying to do there. He's trying to roast it. It turns out Martian Manhunter got a telepathic warning from Green Lantern about keeping the stone safe. The JLA transports everyone off the ship just before the asteroid hits. All of the team meet and find the good Metron and attempt to give him the stone, but it turns out it's fake and the Joker has the real one. Scrambling, Martian Manhunter makes the Joker sane for a few minutes. Lex quickly tells the Joker, hey, why don't you bring back the people of Star City? Which the Joker does, And apparently this saves Lex Luthor from being charged with the crime of all the stuff that happened there in Star City earlier. Flash grabs the stone from the Joker, and we find out that Lex wasn't there after all. They give the stone to Metron, and he delivers a warning that other gods will be coming. The heroes need to take efforts to fortify the Earth. Afterward, Aztec and Connor contemplate quitting the JLA, but they don't have to, because at the end of the issue, Superman agrees to disband the JLA. So that is one hell of 2 issues to end this series. So let's start it off here. Dean, this is the moment that you said, when we talk about this story, it begins and ends with what?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's certain things, I always go back to my beloved Kansas City Royals, and they've won 2 world championships. They've won several, 4 pennants, several division titles. But when you talk about the Kansas City Royals, the conversation always starts and ends with George Brett. That's just how it is. And when it comes to Rock of Ages, and arguably the entire Grant Morrison, Howard Porter run on JLA, we're always going to start and end the conversation. It's like, do you remember the time that Green Arrow and the Atom killed Darkseid? And it always just goes to show you, it's like I was talking about earlier, Superman couldn't have done this, Martian Manhunter couldn't have done this, Captain Marvel couldn't have done this, Captain Atom couldn't have done this. Nobody could have done this but the Atom and Green Arrow. And when it was time to save the world, they did it. Although the world isn't being saved, this issue is actually very cleverly narrated by the Black Racer, because this is all about to go. And he's going around visiting everybody, as is his role in the New Genesis Pantheon. Again, another guy who's not really on the side of New Genesis or Apocalypse. He's just like, well, time to go, buddy. It's great to see all of these awesome last stands, like Argent goes down hard and Azteca. It's like, listen, guys, joke's on you. In a very they live moment, he blows up their transmitter so that all the people, are like, hey, we're free. But yeah, it's all about that moment. I mean, the science and it just goes back to all this stuff. It's like I said, everybody can do their part, and this was their part. And even if, you can argue it doesn't matter because it was all about to be undone by Orion, but it does show you just how great just how indomitable the human spirit is. And no matter how bad things get or how authoritarian any kind of regime is, people always fight against it. That's just how it is. There's never been any government or any institution or regime that was so powerful that it was utterly unchallenged altogether. And those challenges get bigger and bigger and bigger. Before you know it, you're shooting Darkseid in the eye with a tiny man. And before he knows it, he's just the world's strongest statue. I love where Batman in that issue also calls him what I said. He calls him a little baby. He's like, look at you, got to make everything like you. Well, look, it's all ugly, just like you. You're a piece of shit. We won. It's like, you lost. When he gets hit with the Omega effect, which is one of my favorite things ever, it's just and they can find you no matter where you are in the universe. But he can't Omega affect everybody because he's a little baby. And then if he did that to everybody, he can't just kill everybody. He needs to know that everybody's under control. Nobody can ever hurt him. Right. Because if he kills them, what if they somehow come back? Because, Kirby New Genesis Apocalypse technology, right? I mean, that issue is just amazing. It's weird. It almost makes the next issue anticlimactic, but everything winds up coming together. It's neat to see the end of part 2 where Our Man and Metron are talking, and Metron's like, listen, this is the way it always works. Sometimes Darkseid wins, sometimes we win. It's just, we're just going to do this again and again and again because, that's the nature of these things. I like the subtle setup for Mageddon in World War III, where they're like, you have to fortify the Earth, get ready, ready the armies of man. And the next 3 issues, Orion and Big Barter are going to join. They're going to add 6 or 7 people to the Justice League, Steel, Huntress, Big Barda, Orion. Sure, I'm forgetting somebody. Plastic Man joins on a full-time basis. But it's cool to see that little foreshadowing there. I love Green Arrow. I'm just a big Green Arrow mark, regardless of whether it's Connor Hawk or Ollie, and it's just great for him when he makes the turn. And here's Lex Luthor, who supposedly just tells you how smart he is, but he can't see any of this coming. He can't see that he possibly trained Aztec so well that he can undo this plot. He can't see that Green Arrow might be pulling one over on him.
Right.
Maybe he's just here to keep an eye on you. And then when he kicks Ocean Master in the dark and he's telling Lex Luthor, he's like, I'm about to find you. I know right where you are. I'm about to kick your ass. It's just good stuff. I like how Jim, the son of Saturn, is the one who punch it, when it all looks really bad when Luthor's, looks like he's going to win because he should have just used the fucking MacGuffin he had the whole time. Instead, the guy he's been picking on this whole time and forcing to do his labor, the most oppressed of them all saves the day. He gets shot in the shoulder, but Plastic Man tourniquets up. He winds up okay. Spoiler alert. But it's weird. This issue has so much in it, but it almost pales in comparison to the issue before of the Justice League's Last Stand. I guess I'll finish this mostly up with being like, I love Orion. And I was really sad the first time I read this where they're like, Orion's been depowered, but they won't kill him. And that's like the most for Orion, the god of war, this would be like the most terrible thing that can happen. The first time I read it, I missed it. But the next time where I'm like, oh my God. So Orion gets so mad that he's like, I'll just destroy everything. Fuck you. Then we'll just redo it. If you and that's the thing. And I think that's what tyrants don't ever get is how, like I said, nobody ever governs without the consent of the governed on some level. And when you lose that consent, it is wild how far individuals and beings will go to remind these tyrants of who was in charge anyway. It's wild what they will lose, what they will give up. And so to see Orion be willing to give up everything to make sure, set off a new Genesis wave. He's like, we'll just do this. And then Darkseid will be gone. We'll just start all over. Maybe we'll do better next time. We'll see you then. That was just a really cool moment to remind you exactly who is the god of war. And also, like he said, he's like, Darkseid forgot, I am my father's son. You think you think you can destroy things, buddy. You don't know the meaning of the word. You don't understand what that really means.
There are people falling left and right in that issue. Amazo gets downed. Batman gets vaporized. We watch Azteca and Argent die. That makes it feel like it's such an important battle, an important thing that's happening. Even though all this is going to get erased, you get to watch it kind of go down.
Well, it reminds you, especially the moment where the Atom's like, I just realized something can get through your shield, because he complained earlier. He's like, I'm a scientist and reason lost. Maybe reason will win in the end.
Yeah.
That's for all of this guy's bravado and all of this fundamentalism. If you tear his brain lobes apart, he'll die. It just
He's going to die. You just got to get in there.
It's like the Predator. If it bleeds, we can kill it.
We can kill it. The other part that I kind of want to bring up that I really liked, the last issue, the kind of gotcha moment where they thought that they were giving the Philosopher Stone to Metron, and it turns out the Joker has it. I was like, oh man, what is he going to do? And of course, they have to act swiftly. And again, Martian Manhunter tries to put Joker's mind in order for a second, and then all of a sudden he just, his smile drops, and you realize that Martian Manhunter's succeeding for the few seconds, because it's a hell of a battle to try and keep this guy sane. I was wondering, oh man, what the hell is going to happen? Well, actually, he decides to make a smile in the world by cracking the fucking earth open. And so anyway, it was pretty good. I kind of enjoyed that.
Arguably the most unrealistic thing, or the thing that's most out of character, is that Batman hadn't put the Joker in 12 bat straight jackets by then.
Right.
That he would, arguably that's the most out of character thing anybody does, at this point. Quick, everyone pile on the Joker, throw him into space. But no, it was cool. And also, you're like, what would the Joker do with all this power?
Right.
Hey, man, just wait 2.5 years, because Emperor Joker's going to be coming out, and you can find out, buddy.
All right, Darry, what do you got? Take us home, man.
I love, before it's Plastic Man. The Joker is holding up an egg with 2 eyes and a little face drawn on it next to Lex, and he's saying, looky, I'm Lex Luthor. I'm going to be a dick to everyone. I don't think Morrison gets enough credit for being funny. I also am a huge Hourman fan. I think this character is eventually named Matt Tyler. I love the idea of taking Hourman, who's kind of like a one-note character from the Golden Age, and saying, well, what if you expand on the name and you make him the Lord of Time? I like him. I like his time ship. I like his role in 1 Million. I really like the idea of Metron having an apprentice who's someone for which all of time is happening at the same point, the same moment. I thought that was great. I'm a huge fan of the Whirligog. I mentioned before, it's actually from an old Jack Kirby comic called Superpowers, which was an adaptation of the Super Friends show, but not really. It's really just a continuation of his Fourth World books, because Kirby I don't think actually watched Super Friends, but I don't know that for certain.
Well, I think what it was he got to redesign a lot of the Fourth World characters for the toy line so that he could get royalties on them in a way he could not for the Fourth World characters. And they're like, why don't you do a comic book too? And so I didn't really have any. It has it's as much a toy line comic as it is a cartoon comic. And I think actually because of the toy line, that's when they did the Galactic Guardians with Darkseid, not vice versa. But it is a fun comic, and it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing for no other reason. I have the house poster for it, but like it's like the only time that Kirby draws the Joker and the Penguin.
Yeah.
It's one of the only times he draws Wonder Woman, Hawkman, Flash. So it's really worse. Even in his later days, like, you know, he really does a great job with these guys. His Penguin, honestly, might still be the Penguin in my eyes. Short, fat, big old monocle, big old umbrella. Watch the fuck out, Batman.
You know, Kirby, he could draw a pretty person, but he was very comfortable drawing, you know, people who had questionable facial features. You know, most of his comics feature just miserable, ugly people, and the Penguin is no exception. So yeah, I think Kirby really lived in that space. So all that stuff is great. But you know, going back to Rock of Ages, this whole scene in the last issue where Plastic Man and Cersei are doing this weird, you know, fighting, flirting thing. She is not into him.
Some kind of weird kink game.
She is not into him at all. But he's basically like, oh my goodness, you turned me into a pig and I could turn back. I have to get your phone number. And, you know,
gosh.
Plastic Man, I don't know if this was Grant Morrison or Howard Porter or the other two artists who show up for this last issue, but they basically treat Plastic Man as a Bugs Bunny cartoon character. You know, he exists in the same space as all these super serious guys, but he's constantly doing things like having little hearts appear above his head and have his mouth expand and everything else. Right. It's almost like someone from a different genre is helping the Justice League defeat the Injustice Gang, and I love it. Again, little things like this really. He
refers to him as like Dionysus, you know, which is like the god
Dionysus,
of like sex and wine, right? Like, so, which is perfect for him. She's like, God, he's so good at being this. I think he has fooled her. It's like, you must just be like me.
I mean, she's not wrong. Going back to what we were saying before, you know, all the characters do represent a myth. And what is a myth other than something we are feeling that we are trying to explain? And that's what Plastic Man is. Plastic Man can do whatever he wants to do. He's pretty much impervious to harm. He's also been around since the 40s. He's been a good guy. He's been a bad guy. He's been everything else. What does he do? Well, really, fundamentally, he pursues pleasure. She's not wrong. No one just... Sure. Yeah, no one just
fills the role of that trickster myth.
Yes, and I think that's key because, you know, on a team of 7 Type A characters, he really is a wild card, and I really appreciate that because, again, he's all business. He's not doing anything dumb, but he's constantly approaching the situation like, hey, you're all very similar. I'm going to say something that's obvious to me that none of you have brought up before, and that becomes key later on. I think in World War III, he's actually the one who figures out how to defeat the insect queen or some nonsense like that.
Yeah, he is. I remember that now.
Yeah. So, again, great character. Happy to see it here. Happy to see him here. Very happy that Morrison added this. One thing you guys didn't mention, which is a small thing, but I love the fact that anytime Lex Luthor has to refer to the Ocean Master, the line Ocean Master is drawn with quotes around it.
Because, right.
Yeah. Lex Luthor has nothing but contempt for Ocean Master, whatever he is.
He's Aquaman's half brother.
That's the deal, right? He's Aquaman's half brother. Fine. Yeah. Great. Good. And this is after, for those of you who don't know, but the reason he mentions having a trident-esque thing that will cause him great pain if he lets go of it, and the reason Dr. Light looks like Ghost Rider is because the last time these characters were seen, there was a crossover called Underworld Unleashed, where all of the Silver Age villains who were not considered, you know, really cool in the 90s made a deal with the devil to get questionable makeovers.
Good old Neron.
Good old Neron.
Honestly, we should look at that sometime just because it's such a bad idea. And somebody, it's one of those things where the idea, this doesn't happen very often, where somehow some of the execution is good, even though it's a bad idea. You're like, well, this is neat, but I don't like the umbrella that it's under. We should look at that sometime because a lot of stuff doesn't work that way.
like first cameo appearance of the Superman from the Justice Legion?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, like Our Man and him are in the same. Was it Justice Legion A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justice Legion A.
You can see just the silhouette, but you see the three things. And I was like, oh, that's Superman from DC 1 million. Sorry, Darry, that was just a distraction. I was looking through here.
No. Yeah, definitely. DC 1 million and Cal Kent and the Justice Legion are all teased. That's great. The only other thing I was going to say is, this story tries to make a point, which is, you guys saved the world. Great. You're going to save the world a bunch of times. Darkseid's going to keep trying this, but none of that matters. You're the Justice League. You have bigger things to deal with. You very briefly went to Wonderworld, and something is coming that's going to test you as a race, as a concept. Not just another bad guy, but, Megadon, the Anti-Sun, is here. And Dean said this wonderfully before, but the Anti-Sun is coming to take away everything that you are, right? The sun gave life to everything in our system and all of you, for the most part. The Anti-Sun's going to take all that away. And it's not just going to do that here, it's going to do that everywhere. And Wonderworld's going to try its best. The god of the superheroes is going to try to defend, but they're going to fail. And Metron is looking at these guys, and he's got nothing to gain from this. And he's telling them, like, you have to get ready for something that is much more beyond you. And I love
that. That comes.
Yeah. He's saying, like, get the fortifications ready, get your entire species together, because something is coming that you don't. I think Aquaman even says, like, you're describing a battle that we don't have the words to conceptualize.
Right,
and I really like that, because it gets the reader ready for a battle that's going to happen.
Isn't it also cool that when Metron went to Wonderworld, he was as big as those guys?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that was a subtle way to let people know, like, the new gods are something different than heroes.
And, just going back to the Whirligog, the Philosopher's Stone, I love a good cosmic weapon. I've always been a fan of the Infinity Gauntlet and the Cosmic Cube and things like that, the Book of Destiny over in DC. And I love the Whirligog because the idea is, I mentioned before the thing about the hologram, but it really is the idea that the entire universe is contained in this thing that you can hold and you can poke and you can prod. So the reason the bearer of the stone seems to have unlimited powers, because they're actually putting their will and pushing it onto all of reality. And the stone is reflecting that. And I thought that was a really good way of doing it, because the stone doesn't seem to have any agency. Lex says he finds it in Colombia, but it's also a map of the universe and everything else. And even Metron says, oh no, this stupid thing was born here. That's how important you guys are. But I'm going to take it from you because you're not ready yet.
You're not ready.
Down the house.
You're not ready.
Yeah. So
let me ask you guys a question here real quick. I'm looking at, like, near the end of the book, Batman and Superman and Aquaman are convening inside the room while it looks like the Flash is moving furniture, and he's got these weird seats with these heads on them. Like, what? Yes, please look at your book and tell me what the hell this is. I'll share my screen if I need to, but it's only like for a couple panels. You see the Flash, like, moving furniture while Connor is thinking about quitting.
Right.
And the chairs have, like, these weird fucking heads at the top of them. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is going on there.
I don't know, but while Darry looks that up or whatever, because I can see he's got the book, let me point out that, like, it's kind of shit ass of, like, the Justice League to be like, hey, we've got more chairs than there are originally us, but ours have logos. Ours, like, this is Batman's chair. This is Wonder Woman's chair. But then, like, Aztec shows up, like, you just sit in one of those unmarked chairs, Aztec. I'll put the logo. Green Arrow? Really? You want a logo? I don't think so. So anyhow, it's kind of, just I thought that was kind of a shitty thing. Did you see what he's talking about?
I know what he's talking about. I always read that scene as when, and again, I don't know how much of this is just Howard Porter having fun, or again, the last issue has two other artists. I always read that as when Joker had unlimited power for a couple of seconds.
Okay.
He just changed all the chairs because, again, Joker is the type of villain who looks at any ostentatious thing and says, oh, wow, you really, got into yourself about that. So I love the idea that he would look at all the chairs on the table and say, oh, my God, you self-important crazy people.
My God.
And just change everything. I mean, specifically the one the Flash is holding up in the panel you're sharing is Batman's chair. So like, why would Joker do that if he were God, even for a couple of seconds?
That's hilarious, dude. I'm sitting there like, I thought this was something that, but that's hilarious because they're probably like, well, shit, now we got to get all new chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're going to be like, hey, Metron, come back really quick. Can you fix the chair?
Like he, the Joker undoes the smile, puts the world back to the way he found it, resurrects all of those people, and even understands the terrible things he's done for a couple of seconds. He also messes up Batman's chair because he is the Joker, and I thought that was remarkable. So.
Final thoughts, guys.
The only other thing I have to say about it, other than just read it, is there have been like 77 trillion superhero comics, right? But there were only 2 moments that like we ever talk about where a guy shot another guy on an arrow. And it's this one where they kill Darkseid, and it's Hawkeye and Ant-Man, right? Like that's right. It. You'd think this would come up more often because there's a lot of guys with arrows and a lot of little guys, but it only happens twice, and we love them both. And I think in a weird way, we love them both equally. Now, this was a more important moment, but man, that cover looks so cool. So, but as far as Rock of Ages go, there's, we've been talking about it for a while. We can talk more about it because there's a lot of nooks and crannies and nuances. It's just a great superhero. It's an epic for our times, the way Jack Kirby described the old Fourth World book. It's really superhero mythology pushed as far as it can go. And you're going to love it also because now this same story, somebody would take like 32 issues to tell. You're going to be in it. You can read this twice in a day if you want, and really have it down. So all I can really say is it is one of the true classics of the 90s, one of the true classics of the Justice League of America. That's a franchise that spans way back, so it's worth your time to check out. It's worth your time to be a part of this crazy unfolding of events. And Green Arrow's the best, man. He's the best one in there. Love him.
I can tell you that I enjoyed what I read. As dense as this was, and as there is a lot happening here. A lot.
And the last issue is a double-sized issue.
Jeez Louise. So, even if you're not like completely familiar with what is going on with the JLA at this point in time, Blue Superman, what the hell is going on? Don't worry. It's okay, folks. You will enjoy the story. Trust me. You do not need to know absolutely everything that has happened prior to this. It is still a good story on its own.
You mentioned that. What it reminds me of in a lot of ways too is Transformers the movie, in that like the animated one, in that like you don't have to know a lot about what happened before, and it just never stops. Everything just goes. Right. Goes. That's how this is. There's really not a lot of, other than them drinking coffee when they also get like mentally accosted by Cersei, not a whole lot of slowdown here.
So yeah, I enjoyed myself. There was a lot of elements in this that really spoke to me. That and what a fantastic second to last issue. So take it away, Darry. Final thoughts.
This is a great comic, and everyone should read it. But one of the best things I like about it is there are many characters. Everyone gets something to do. You think in a team where you have the big 7, and then you have new members who join, and then you have 7 supervillains, and then you have a litany of bad guys. Everyone gets a great moment. And I think that's important because, Grant Morrison's not intimidated by writing a dozen characters. They do the same thing when they write new X-Men. Everyone gets a really good moment. And that's one of the reasons why I think this is so iconic. This isn't one of these comics where it's called Justice League, but it's just Batman using the characters like sidekicks for 16 issues. It really is a Justice League story. You follow all the characters, and you really see how you need everyone to save the day. It's not just a single person's story. So I think that's one of the reasons it's lasted so long. It really tells a story that you need multiple characters for. And it also shows you why the concept is so enduring. I mentioned before that Darkseid is really the god of control. And in many ways, the Justice League represent they're humanity's pantheon. So when they meet this evil god, this evil presence, can they overpower him? Yeah, they can. Whether it's because they can shoot him in the face with a beam of light and give him a stroke, or because they can travel back in time because they can work with Metron and undo everything, or because, they're from the planet the Philosopher's Stone is from originally, they do find a way to beat him. And I like that because it basically tells the reader, like, yeah, listen, you're going to have bad, terrible days, but if you can get with other people and you can sit down and think through this stuff and make sure that it doesn't overwhelm you, you are going to make it. And I think that's really important. And that's something that, like the D creator, Morrison always goes back to. There's that famous panel in All-Star Superman where Superman stops someone from committing suicide. Doom Patrol and Flex Mentallo have that theme revisited multiple times. Like, this is something that Morrison really believes in, and it's nice to see it even in otherwise ephemeral superhero comics. So I think it's great. I think it could have only come out at the time it did, and I love it very much. The only thing I'll mention that no one's mentioned so far is this is not the original Mirror Master from like the John Broome comics of the 60s and 70s. This is a new one that Morrison created, who is Scottish, who I believe is actually from Glasgow, where Grant Morrison is from. And the character says repeatedly, like, I work for the highest bidder. So you guys mentioned before, but Bruce Wayne just cuts him a check. And Alfred says something along the lines of, I don't understand, you're giving the bad guy money. And Batman goes, oh, no, it's going to the orphanage where he was raised. And then he just says, never underestimate the sentimentality of a Scotsman. And I just thought, if that doesn't describe the entire JLA run by Grant Morrison, nothing else will. Never underestimate the sentimentality of Grant Morrison.
Love it. All right, guys, we did it. This has been, as far as issues go and spending time talking about some issues, this is a long one. 2.5 hours. So,
well, I mean, it's 5 regular size issues and a double size issue, and every issue is probably 3 issues worth of stuff.
Right, dude. Dense.
I mean, it honestly works. Like I said, it's like Transformers the movie. If you think about everything that happens in that movie, it's a lot happens, right. But you never feel like it as it happens. It just rolls and rolls and rolls, and you go along. You get on that roller coaster, you get off. You better choose really quickly. But I don't think many people will choose not to get on.
That's right. All right. Well, Dean Compton, tell them about the Unspoken Decade.
All right.
Do it.
TheUnspokenDecade.com. A lot of articles up there. We're the Facebook. Just look for us, Unspoken Decade. We're on Twitter. I need to get back to doing those cards. And I say every time on here, I'm gonna update the Instagram, but I still haven't. But I'm gonna write it down on a piece of paper and lose it. So maybe that'll get it done.
That's progress.
Right. Hey, listen. Progress is slow and incremental.
Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you are listening to the Source Material Comics feed. And we have all sorts of great shows on here. Previous episodes of the Unspoken Issues podcast. You can hear me, Dean, and Darry talking a wide variety of 90s comics. You could check out us talking Unity, crossover that occurred in the Valiant universe. Go back in the archives, you could find it. G.I. Joe Extreme is going to be on in the archives by the time this airs. My goodness.
What if they're hungry? Check out the Pizza Hut. Check out the Pizza Hut podcast.
Yes, we had 2 episodes regarding the Pizza Hut comics.
Deep and dish.
That was great stuff. You can also check out the Source Material Comics podcast, where we are, we're just all over the place. We're not just talking 90s comics over there. Most recent episode, let's just say one that's upcoming right now, is actually a re-air from a long time ago, where myself, Mark Radulich, and Ronnie Adams sat down and talked Ant-Man, Second Chance Man, one of Darry's favorite heroes, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
he does like a Scott Lang.
I love a Scott Lang. I love a good Scott Lang.
That's good stuff. Anyway, check that out, folks. I think that's going to be it for tonight. So for Dean Compton, for Darry Waite, I'm Jesse Starcher. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Darkseid Is.
Darkseid Is.
Darkseid Is.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.